Chapter 2068. On the stage, Chu Yang could be seen in every corner. Every Chu Yang was real, but the difference in strength between every Chu Yang was huge. This was naturally a flaw. Chu Yang was used to confuse the eyes and ears. Many Chu Yang spoke at the same time. Eastern maggot, are you confused? It was unknown how many voices of Chu Yang had spoken. Many voices mixed together, causing the entire world to be filled with his voice all of a sudden. Every Chu Yang was also moving, and there were more and more Chu Yang being born. In addition to the confusion caused by the 5 elements disorder steps, it made people's perception even more chaotic, making it even harder to see the essence of what was going on. Many people were really confused. To them, this was unimaginable. It was too miraculous. Is there any use in creating a pile of trash to confuse the eyes? Gong Sunlong was not an ordinary person after all. He immediately caught the flaw and sneered, "Wild dog, you are hiding in the trash. I will clear all the trash. You have nowhere to run. You can't escape even if you have wings." However, his strength was rapidly declining, and so was his speed. The wild dog would definitely not allow him to use the yin-yang 4 phases steps again. This was his only chance. Roar. Between the roars of dragons and tigers, the azure dragon swung its tail, and the white tiger roared in the forest. The vermilion bird and black tortoise were not to be outdone. The vermilion bird fought in the sky, and the black tortoise stirred up the sea. As soon as the 4 symbols appeared, they fiercely displayed their might. Bang! 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 One after another, Chu Yang exploded into pieces. Endless blood and flesh splattered everywhere. The arena instantly turned into a slaughterhouse, a bloody hell. Every Chu Yang was real, and they all had flesh and blood. This completely overturned everyone's understanding. How could every Chu Yang be made of flesh and blood? How could every one of them be real? How could every one of them be a real person? The whole place was silent. No one could make a sound. Only when the flesh and blood in the sky turned into surging magic power and dissipated did an uproar break out. Phew. As expected, they are not real. You scared me to death. If this is all true, then this world must be in chaos. Pit Chu's methods are so brilliant and amazing. I can only prostrate myself before him. I can only kneel before him. This wasn't the real Chu Yang, but merely a transformation of his magical power. Everyone released countless gasps of surprise, but they still couldn't calm down. This kind of method was simply unprecedented. Eastern maggot, are you very smart? 8 Chu Yang's voices sounded at the same time. While they were talking, the remaining 7 to 8 Chu Yang once again displayed the 5 elements chaotic steps. In the blink of an eye, the densely packed Chu Yang once again covered the entire arena, dazzling the onlookers and causing trypophobia to flare up. This, Chu Yang had once again surpassed everyone's understanding. He easily created many more Chu Yang. That effortless look made everyone feel that he could continue like this endlessly. The 4 symbols displayed their might once again, but Chu Yang, who had been eliminated in the blink of an eye, replaced them. Wild dog, this is a waste of time. He has already seen through the mysteries of the yin-yang 4 symbols step. 2 thoughts flashed through Gong Sunlong's mind. Then, he cursed, "Wild dog, do you really think I can't do anything to you?" As soon as he finished speaking, a divine rainbow flew out from Gong Sunlong's body and hovered above his head. Before he could see what it was, the light dimmed. Then, he realized that it was a treasure bottle. The bottom was black and white. On the bottle, the azure dragon, white tiger, vermilion bird, and black tortoise each occupied a direction in the north, south, east, and west. They were so lifelike that they seemed to be able to rush out of the bottle at any time. The bottle was wrapped in a ball of gentle light, but the mouth of the bottle was pitch black, like an endless abyss. One could see that the light was constantly being swallowed by the bottle like flowing water. The world became even darker, as if night was about to fall. Everyone's gazes landed on the bottle. Needless to say, it could only be the Gongsun family's yin-yang 4 symbols bottle that could turn day into night in the blink of an eye. Chu Yang's eyes naturally fell on the bottle as well. He muttered to himself, "This is the Gongsun family's yin-yang 4 symbols bottle." Chapter 2069. The yin-yang four symbols vase. Gong Sun Long has finally used his trump card. Many people had been waiting for this scene for a long time. This yin-yang four symbols vase is not a saint item. It is not the real one. It should be a replica made by the Gong Sun family. However, it is definitely of the highest quality. A replica is the most suitable one. Gong Sun Long is not powerful enough to use a saint item. Haha. Wild Dog is finish. He is completely finished. Once the yin-yang four symbols vase is used, Wild Dog will not be able to resist it. The ridicule and mockery shocked people. The yin-yang four symbols vase was said to be extremely powerful. What could Chu Hang use to resist it? Chu Hang was indeed finish. People agreed with this point. Haha. Wild Dog, you are so arrogant. Keep being arrogant. This time, I would like to see how arrogant you can be. You are just a wild dog. You were refined to death by the yin-yang four symbols vase. You did not become a dog for nothing. Arrogant people were even more arrogant. Gong Sun Long could only mock and ridicule these idiots. He was not so optimistic, and he was not so stupid. His opponent was Chu Yang. It was not a joke. If he did not try his best, he would be a joke. With a whoosh, the blackness in the mouth of the bottle deepened, and the suction force became stronger. Immediately, many Chu Yangs were unable to control their own bodies, and were directly swallowed into the bottle. One by one, the densely packed Chu Yangs were forcefully swallowed into the bottle like moths darting into a flame. They struggled with all their might, but it was to no avail. In a flash, only Chu Yang was left in the arena. He could not hide anymore. The mouth of the treasure vase turned around and aimed at him. Then, the devouring power that erupted from the vase gushed toward him. Rumble. Suddenly, the world was completely dark. You could not even see your own fingers. It was still bright in the distance, but not a single ray of light escaped from the arena. The light in the distance was like flowing water, converging into a river of light, surging towards the arena, and was completely devoured by the four symbols yin-yang vase. People even felt that their eyeballs were about to be pulled out of their eye sockets by a ray of light and thrown into it. This was an indescribable devouring power. When it reached the pinnacle, it could simply devour the heavens and absorb the earth. At this moment, many people finally understood why the yin-yang four symbols vase was considered invincible in the eastern continent. The sky darkened quickly and brightened quickly as well. When everything returned to normal, the crowd did not immediately look at Chu Yang. Their eyes were all fixed on the yin-yang four symbols vase. No one could resist such a devouring power, so they had already assumed that Chu Yang would be swallowed into the vase. The only question left was whether or not Chu Yang could break out. However, Gong Sun Long's gaze unexpectedly did not land on the bottle. His pupils trembled, and his eyes were fixed in disbelief. His reaction was a great guide to the others. Immediately, they followed his gaze and were petrified on the spot. What did they see? A man with his hands behind his back, like a man beyond the heavens, was looking down at them from above. It was as if he had seen all the laughable things of the mortal world, all the stupidity, emotions, life, death, sickness, and death of the mortal world. Cold, indifferent, emotionless, and thoughtless. It was as if he was the embodiment of the heavenly way, and he regarded everything as a straw dog. The crowd became even more silent. They did not even dare to breathe. It was as if they were treading on thin ice when the heavenly way appeared, and their hearts were filled with fear. Chu Yang. Chu Yang was like a rock. He did not move at all in the air, and his position did not move at all. Even the terrifying devouring power, which could directly plunge the world into endless darkness, could not devour him. Chapter 2070. As expected of Chu Hang. What a great illusion of the Chu clan. It's not that the yin-yang four symbols isn't strong, it's just that Chu Hang is too strong. At this moment, everyone's heart was turned upside down, including Gong Sun Long. He had expected that Chu Yang would be able to withstand it, but he couldn't accept such an outcome. The yin-yang four symbols vase could be defeated, but it couldn't be defeated like this. It was completely ineffective, and the legend of the Gong Sun clan had collapsed. The Gong Sun clan's reputation would also fall into the abyss. Eastern Maggot, Can you show your trump card now? Chu Yang was extremely indifferent. Jing Wuming had warned him beforehand, so he had already prepared for it. It wasn't difficult for him. However, the 100 grotto heavens didn't appear, and he wasn't as relaxed as he seemed. Although the shocking devouring power was mostly neutralized, there was still a devouring power pulling him. He was like a celestial body being affected by the gravitational force of another celestial body. Dong. Gong Sun Long took a step forward with surging hatred and killing intent. The sound of a heavenly drum rang out again, shaking heaven and earth. Dong. Chu Yang also took a step forward, and a loud sound rang out, shaking heaven and earth. Dong, dong. When the two of them took a second step, the ground under their feet became hazy and chaotic. Yin and Yang appeared, and their auras increased. Dong. Gong Sun Long took a third step. Because he had already used the yin-yang 4 symbol steps once before, the essence of heaven and earth couldn't be completely replenished. When this step landed, the feeling of heaven and earth weakening once again entered people's senses. However, what shocked them was that when Chu Yang took a third step, the feeling of heaven and earth weakening suddenly disappeared, and even became vigorous. A dazzling white light burst out from under his feet at this time. It was like a tentacle of laws, like a link, connecting Chu Yang to something. I seem to have heard such a saying. Of the 5 elements, one is sun metal, one is sun wood, one is sun water, one is sun fire, and one is sun earth. Someone couldn't help but blurt out. I have the same feeling. This feeling seemed to be very strong. They felt as if Chu Yang was preaching the great Tao on behalf of the heavens. First there is yin and yang, then there are the 5 elements. Chu Yang's footwork seems to be as such. His footwork can be said to be the yin-yang 5 element steps. Yin and yang can form the 4 divisions, and can also be divided into the 5 elements. If this is the case, then Chu Hang can be said to be tit for tat. The person who spoke sighed. Why didn't Chu Hang use this kind of footwork immediately? I feel that Chu Hang was inspired by the yin-yang 4 phases steps and had a great comprehension. From there, he created his own footwork that is comparable to the yin-yang 4 phases step. Chu Yang had created a saint technique. Such speculations seemed to have become the law of silence, descending and suppressing the clamor that had just arisen. At first, people were extremely shocked, but soon felt that there was no need to elaborate. This was indeed unbelievable, but for Chu Yang, was this a problem? How many impossibilities had Chu Hang created? How many miracles had he created? It was just natural for him to live like this. Dong dong dong. The two of them took 3 more steps, and the vast and majestic sound was really shocking to the soul. Many people couldn't help but cover their ears, but even so, blood still flowed out. They were evenly matched. Chu Yang's yin-yang 5 element steps didn't seem to be inferior to Gong Sun Long's yin-yang 4 phases steps. After Gong Sun Long's footwork stopped, he took another step. Amidst the rumbling of the world, 2 5-colored auspicious clouds under his feet completely lifted him up, like a god. Rumble, rumble, rumble. After accumulating power, Chu Yang felt a great improvement in his body. His heroic spirit surged, and he roared. Crimson flames spewed out from his body as he charged towards Gong Sun Long. Chapter 2071. Chu Hang's yin-yang 5 element steps can indeed reach extreme speed. Guesses were guesses, but facts were facts. When everything became reality, many people were so shocked that their jaws almost fell to the ground when they saw Chu Yang's body that was like a meteor from outer space. At this moment, the pores all over Chu Yang's body were spewing out flames. His aura was terrifying. His body was sparkling and translucent like jade, emitting sparkling and translucent light. There was also a kind of thunderous might in his sharp aura. The endless flames were accompanied by the astonishing thunderous force. Gong Sun Long was not to be outdone. Boom! Both of them were extremely fast. Their movements were too fast, and they were rampaging. Their palms and fingers were sometimes a vermilion bird, sometimes an azure dragon, sometimes a black tortoise, and sometimes a white tiger. They stirred up the void and were about to shatter it. Bang! This time, Gong Sun Long was directly sent flying like a kite with a broken string. He was almost sent flying out of the arena. His body trembled, and blood kept flowing out from the corner of his mouth. Then, his eyes were extremely cold as he soared into the sky again and charged towards Chu Yang. He did not believe that Chu Yang's yin-yang 5-element steps could defeat his yin-yang 4-phases step. He just created the yin-yang 5-element steps, but it has already surpassed the yin-yang 4-phases steps. It's really amazing. Below the arena, Zongjian, who had not spoken for a long time, could not help but reveal a shocked expression. The yin-yang 4-phases steps had been famous in the East continent for a long time, and it was an amazing saint technique. Chu Yang's move was like creating a saint technique, which made Zongjian unable to calm down. Feng Porlong was almost speechless. He said, "So, you think he'll definitely win?" "Probably." Zongjian indeed thought so, but he was very reserved. Roar. The roar of the dragon and tiger, the high-pitched cry of the vermilion bird, and the roar of the black tortoise were mixed together. The sound waves rushed up to the 9 heavens and down to the 9 abysses. With the azure dragon and white tiger on his left and the vermilion bird on his right, Gong Sun Long stood there like a heavenly lord, looking down on all his enemies in the world. At this moment, there was no longer any need to hide the yin-yang 4-phases steps. At the same time, Chu Yang let out a soft whistle, and the 4 divisions appeared simultaneously. The azure dragon on the left, the white tiger on the right, the vermilion bird in front, the black tortoise behind, and the great mountain in the middle of the 4 divisions. Metal, wood, water, and fire could form the 4 symbols. Earth should be the Gauchun, but he didn't know the Gauchun's technique, which was to replace it with mountains. Gong Sun Long rode the 4 elephants over, and the 4 elephants kept bursting out from his legs. Chu Yang was sometimes one with the azure dragon, occupying the vast sky, sometimes one with the vermilion bird, covering the sky, sometimes one with the white tiger, shocking the world with its baleful aura, sometimes one with the black tortoise, impregnable as a fortress. Bang bang bang. The 2 of them were like 2 bolts of lightning clashing against each other. After countless shocking collisions, the 4 beasts roared and the arena shook violently. In the end, the array on the arena collapsed completely. Everyone's expressions changed. The arena was constructed from special materials and had a formation protecting it. Even if both of them had a formation that could restrain the collision, the arena shouldn't have collapsed. However, something like this had happened. Kill. In the sky, the 4 elephants were still fighting, and the great mountain was resisting the pull of the yin-yang 4 divisions vase. Chu Yang was constantly exchanging blows with Gong Sun Long, fierce, tyrannical, swift, and filled with dense killing intent. Every move was fatal. It was like 2 worlds were clashing, and only ghosts were crying and gods were howling. It was as if the end of the world had arrived. So terrifying, so intense. In the past 6 academies' combined competition, there has never been such a world-shaking battle. If this continues, who will win and who will lose? Why do I feel that Chu Hang is more tyrannical and fierce? His chances of winning seem to be higher. Chu Hang is extraordinary, but Gong Sun Long also has the potential to strike the 9 heavens and 9 underworld. Chapter 2072. In the eyes of the vast majority of people on the arena, the battle between Chu Yang and Gong Sun Long was extremely thrilling. In fact, it had already reached its climax. However, some people thought that the 2 were just playing a game. At least, Nangong Xing thought so. Nangong Xing didn't mingle with the crowd to watch this battle. He was looking at Chu Yang and Gong Sun Long on the arena, and also at the people below the arena, as well as the headmasters of the 6 academies and the leaders on the closed stands. Everything in the arena was like a huge ocean to Nangong Xing. There were too many things he had to pay attention to. He had to be careful because he was really nothing, especially in front of the leaders of the 6th college. He was just an ant. Although he was an ant, he was one of the few ants who had a clear mind. Chu Yang and Gong Sun Long hadn't used their true strength yet. They were both extremely careful and cautious. They wouldn't strike like a thunderbolt if they weren't completely certain of their victory. They wouldn't kill the other party. This was because once they failed, not only would they reveal their trump cards, but they might also lose their balance and completely lose control of the situation. One careless move and the whole game would be lost. This might be the final result. Gong Sunlong was definitely an amazing person. Although Nan Gongxing didn't like Gong Sunlong, he still had to admit that Gong Sunlong was an amazing person who was worth learning from and admiring. Gong Sunlong had very good self-discipline. He would definitely do what he should do. He would definitely not do what he shouldn't do. He knew everything very clearly. He would definitely not violate his own discipline and go against his own rules. Self-discipline was his rule, a great rule. Therefore, he could easily stay calm and had endless patience. He always maintained his rationality like an assassin patiently waiting for the best opportunity to kill. Gong Sunlong definitely hadn't used his trump cards yet. Everyone knew about the so-called yin-yang 4 symbols bottle. Chu Yang was also an amazing person. The 5 Hells Motherchild Heavenly Demon Cauldron was a level 9 formation that was like a sword hanging in the sky. It was constantly intimidating Gong Sunlong. In Nan Gongxing's opinion, the 5-colored divine light was deliberately leaked by Chu Yang. Gong Sunlong would definitely find a way to counter his array formation, and the 5-colored divine light would be a good counter. He didn't know how long the two of them were going to play. Perhaps they would stop playing very soon. One of them would take the lead and think that they had grasped the perfect opportunity, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and take the lead to attack. The reason why Nan Gongxing was like this was naturally because he had interrogated something from Yi Yu. Yi Yu was a smart person. Sometimes, a smart person was the easiest to convince. Because he was a smart person, he was always rational. He knew the pros and cons and the consequences very well. Therefore, he would make the right choice. Therefore, Nan Gongxing obtained some information that he wanted to know. However, what he learned made him worried. Even if Chu Yang won, it was not a victory. In addition, Yi Yu was a smart person. He didn't know much. He couldn't even be sure that what he heard from Gong Sunlong was true and reliable. Yi Yu was talking about Gong Sunlong. Unfortunately, at the most critical moment, he took advantage of Nan Gongxing's carelessness and killed himself. Nan Gongxing was caught off guard. He wanted to slap himself. Gong Sun's who wasn't as smart as Yi Yu. His choice was also very stupid. Therefore, he died a terrible death. However, he kept his mouth shut. Chapter 2073. Nan Gongxing was only one of them, and he thought he was clear-headed. He remembered that Yin Meng was also a member of the sentient beings, but she was completely caught up in the situation and couldn't extricate herself. She was extremely nervous and worried, and she was constantly on tenterhooks. She was very worried about Chu Yang, very worried. In fact, she didn't really understand herself. She hated Chu Yang for ruining her chastity, but in the end, she realized that her heart had been stolen by that bastard Chu Yang. When she realized this, she just laughed at herself. How can someone who can make Shangguan Lan fall in love with not be attractive? The little fellow beside her remembered Yin. This little loli was very engrossed in watching the movie. From time to time, she would make a fuss and call out brother-in-law. Every time her younger sister was endlessly worried, her emotions were the same. Moreover, she gave the best evidence. Therefore, she had no choice but to admit that she had also fallen for the trick. Little Zen Master Fa Zhao and Mu Zizhen were both fated with the Buddha. They had come into contact with Chu Yang before. So, they seemed to have used their compassion on Chu Yang. The changes in the situation were also affecting their hearts at all times. Chen Borang really wanted Chu Yang to die, but he could only hope that his hope wouldn't lead to Chu Yang's death. The person who was the most unhappy was Long Xiaojun. Whether it was Chu Yang or Gong Sunlong, only one could die. For him, it would be best if the one to die was Chu Yang. His intuition told him that Chu Yang was much more of a bastard than Gong Sunlong. However, he would never admit that Chu Yang was scarier than Gong Sunlong, and he was more wary of him. Fuck you, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you. Long Xiaojun was so annoyed that he activated the 3-character classic and cursed everything in the world. His intuition told him that one day in the future, he would definitely kneel down to Chu Yang and willingly submit to him. This was really too bad, too bad. Boom. At this time, Chu Yang was ferocious and domineering as he channeled his physique to the pinnacle, causing Gong Sunlong to spit out a mouthful of blood. Shortly after, Gong Sunlong was beaten like a scarecrow by Chu Yang and was slammed into the ground. Hash yuan yuan hash 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 yuan %. Long Shaojuan's face darkened, as if someone had proven to him that his intuition was correct. He cursed even more furiously in his heart. Is the outcome going to be decided? Is Chu Yang going to win? Many people cried out in alarm. Just now, Gong Sunlong didn't even have the strength to fight back. Impossible. Who is Gong Sunlong? He was the future heir of the Gongsun family. In the future, he would definitely dominate the East continent with the yin-yang 4 symbols vase. In any case, the spells that he's used so far are only the tip of the iceberg. He hasn't even used his martial soul, the yin-yang 4 symbols bottle. Although I don't want to admit it, I have to agree. Gong Sunlong is much more powerful than Chu Hang. Besides, the current situation doesn't mean anything. Wasn't Chu Yang also suppressed by Gong Sunlong before? Gong Sunlong has a 90% chance of winning. The cruel reality will happen soon. Shangguan Lan had bright eyes and white teeth. She was like a quietly blooming divine flower, but no one appreciated her. She didn't say anything and was very calm. She clearly knew that Chu Yang still had to go through a lot of such fierce battles. And, a battle of this level with Gong Sunlong shouldn't be considered a big deal. After all, the East continent couldn't be compared to the Middle continent. Chapter 2074. It's really surprising that your physical body is so strong to such an extent. On the messy arena, in the largest and deepest crater, Gong Sunlong's figure slowly stood up, shrouded in dust and fog. Immediately, everyone saw his smile. It was a smile without any warmth. Sharp killing intent surged in his eyes, and an endless fighting spirit rose in him. But it doesn't matter. Otherwise, I would be afraid of the sharp teeth and claws of a wild dog like you. If you were too weak, wouldn't I become a joke? Gong Sun Bu walked out of the crater step by step. He didn't use the yin-yang 4 phases steps, but his aura moved like a dragon. It was as if thousands of flames were erupting from his body at the same time. An aura that made the dead spirit realm warriors pale in fright surged out. In the air, when he confronted Chu Yang again, the aura of death around him was already surging. Corpses, white bones, mass graves, yellow springs, great tombs, all kinds of death phenomena appeared. The smell of decay and the aura of death spread out, and yellow corpse water splashed under his feet. An indescribable pressure spread out. Under such pressure, everyone could smell the aura of death. They felt that Gong Sunlong had become incomparably dangerous, as if he was possessed by the god of death. He could take their lives at any time. One of Gong Sunlong's eyes was surging with the aura of death, like a kingdom of death. In the other eye, a bottle was floating up and down. It could be seen that it was swallowing the light in the world, and the surroundings quickly dimmed. He looked at Chu Yang in front of him and smiled again without any warmth. The corner of his mouth curved into an extremely cold arc, and he said, "You seem to have forgotten something. Am I right? Dead spirit realm." Gong Sunlong was actually in the dead spirit realm. People didn't know Gong Sunlong's true realm. Now that they knew, they were shocked. They felt that the world was tilting towards Gong Sunlong. Gong Sunlong's dead spirit realm was definitely not the dead spirit realm of ordinary people. Just like Chu Yang's dead spirit realm, it was not something ordinary people could compare to. Chu Yang could kill people whose cultivation base was higher than his, and so could Gong Sunlong. Perhaps he was not as exaggerated as Chu Yang, but this was not important. What was important was that even if this difference was offset, Gong Sunlong was at least a great realm higher than Chu Yang. Although it was not very accurate, it could be described this way. The current Chu Yang facing Gong Sunlong was like facing himself in the Nirvana realm. Are you emphasizing your nobility and showing your superiority again? Chu Yang didn't care at all, and then laughed lightly. You're so shameless. Congratulations, we're kindred spirits. Haha. Liu Yunpeng and the others burst into laughter. Their feelings were different from the others. Gong Sunlong's cultivation level was higher than Chu Yang's, but this was not a big deal because it was Chu Yang. Are you showing your arrogance again? Gong Sunlong's cold smile disappeared. His words were as cold as ice. You're incorrigible. Chu Yang didn't answer. With a thought, there was a loud rumble. The long-forgotten five hells mother-child heavenly demon cauldron in the sky once again entered the minds of the forgetful people. Ninth rank array master. Chu Hang is a ninth rank array master. So what if Gong Sun Long was in the dead spirit realm? Wasn't Chu Yang a ninth rank array master even more shocking? Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The yin-yang four symbols vase blocked in front of Chu Yang. The snake-like weapon floated above Gong Sun Long's head again. Many people realized that not only did they forget about the five hells mother-child heavenly demon cauldron, but they also seemed to have forgotten something. Chapter 2075. Rumble. The sky darkened, and in the blink of an eye, layers of lightning surged out and gathered, covering an area of several thousand feet. The dark clouds were very low, and the dark thunder cloud seemed to be right in front of them. The pressure made it hard for everyone to breathe. Within the thunderclouds, the immense power of lightning was like numerous gigantic silver dragons swimming about playfully, releasing a terrifying pressure of the heavens and earth. The dark clouds were about to destroy the city. In the sky, the five hells mother-child heavenly demon cauldrons had formed a five elements formation. The five elements produced thunder, which then formed the thundercloud. The terror of a level 9 formation was fully displayed, and it was even more terrifying than the first time Chu Yang had used it. Obviously, when he first set up the formation to deal with Gong Sun Long, Chu Yang had not fully activated the power of the formation. Now, he did not hold back at all. Rumble. A huge thunderbolt suddenly drilled out of the thundercloud. When it descended, the surprising thing was that it didn't fall on Gong Sun Long's body. Instead, it fell directly on Chu Yang. When the thunder arrived, Chu Yang let out a muffled groan. His body was about to collapse, and the majestic power of thunder and lightning was directly absorbed into his body. Not a single trace of it leaked out, but a terrifying wave of energy was emitted from his body. Gong Suanlong's expression changed. He did not know what Chu Yang was going to do, so he was worried and frightened. Especially in the sky, the formation formed by the five hells mother-child heavenly demon cauldrons did not weaken after releasing the thunder power. Instead, it became even more violent. Eastern Maggot, I only need one move to kill you. Whoosh. Chu Yang suddenly launched an attack. With a whoosh, he shot out a five-colored divine light, sweeping towards the yin-yang vase and the snake-like whip treasures. Devour. Gong Sun Long roared again and again. The yin-yang four symbols vase trembled and emitted a buzzing sound. Soon after, it began to spin and the entire vase disappeared. A huge black hole was formed in its place, like a giant beast opening its mouth to devour the five-colored light. On the other side, a shadow of the yin-yang four symbols vase appeared above the snake-like whip treasure. It erupted with a tremendous devouring power, devouring the five-colored divine light. The ray of light was like water, sinking into an abyss. It was swallowed by two huge devouring forces. The world was completely dark, and one couldn't even see one's own fingers. In the endless darkness, there was only a ray of five-colored light. This was the confrontation between the divine ability and the yin-yang four symbols vase. The two of them were in a stalemate. The five-colored divine light was actually locked in place, and the two terrifying devouring powers were locked in an evenly matched confrontation. Crack. A moment later, like a black demonic mountain being torn apart, a ray of light burst out from the black hole formed by the yin-yang four symbols vase. Like a divine sword, it cut the black hole in half. The divine power of the five-colored divine light won in the end and defeated the terrifying devouring power. Wild dog, Gong Sun Long said, you were holding back earlier, but I wasn't holding back either. King Heaven Devourer Snake, devour heaven and earth. No one could see him, but only hear his voice. In the darkness, the hissing sound of a viper flicking its forked tongue could be heard. And yet, Gong Sun Long was nowhere to be seen. The only thing that could be seen was that the black hole had devoured the ray of light, and everything had returned to normal. The situation had changed, and the result had been reversed. The five-colored divine light was a legendary divine ability, and it was slowly moving toward the black hole, as if it were about to be devoured. It was completely unbelievable. The five-colored divine light could wipe out all living things in heaven and earth, and could not be defeated. And yet, it was being suppressed. Everyone couldn't believe that a myth was being destroyed right in front of their eyes. At the same time, they were all thinking the same thing. Rumors are just rumors. Legends are just legends. That so-called five-colored divine light is nothing more than that. It's just a magical technique, and it's just a bit stronger. Chapter 2076. Rumble. At this moment, a thunderous roar rang out again. A five-colored lightning suddenly burst forth. It was like the terrifying lightning that tore apart the heavens in the dark night. What was different was that the terrifying lightning that night sky saw only tore apart the night sky for a brief moment. However, this five-colored lightning was extremely domineering, as if it was going to completely tear apart the sky. The darkness was instantly shattered, and light descended once again. It was incomparably dazzling, making it impossible for people to open their eyes. Rumble. Before they could react, endless dazzling thunder rays illuminated the world. The thunder cloud was like a nest of 10,000 dragons. Endless thunder dragons shuttled back and forth within it. Soon after, a huge thunder dragon descended with a loud rumble. The world trembled violently as the sound of thunder reverberated between the heavens and the earth. As all of this happened, the huge bolt of lightning landed on Gong Sun Long's body. The two treasures were taken away in an instant. Gong Sun Long had no time to react and was struck by the lightning. His entire body spasmed, and his handsome face was distorted as he was drowned by the lightning. His mouth and nose were filled with the power of thunder and lightning. When the thunder and lightning entered his body, it was endless. In the blink of an eye, his body became transparent. Then, it suddenly expanded and turned into a huge thunderball. Rumble. In the next moment, the huge thunderball exploded, and the boundless power of thunder and lightning gushed out like a flood. The endless dazzling lightning arcs were like numerous rivers, surging in all directions and converging towards the sea. Everyone was temporarily deafened by the thunderous roar. A moment later, the lightning tide faded away. The dazzling lightning radiance and the sound of thunder all came from the sky. The original place had already calmed down. Only the wind was still whistling, as if it was telling everyone in horror what had just happened. There was nothing, not even a speck of dust. Gong Sun Long was nowhere to be seen, as if he had vanished from the face of the earth. Gong Sun Long was dead, and there was nothing left of him. There were countless questions that the crowd was unable to understand in a short period of time. Everything happened too quickly, and it also ended too quickly. At this moment, Chu Yang also did not understand the situation. He did not know whether Gong Sun Long was dead or alive. All of a sudden, he felt a cold and gloomy aura that made his heart palpitate. In an instant, he felt as if he had fallen into an ice cave, and his entire body turned ice cold. What is it? Behind us? Not good. Wang. Chu Yang suddenly felt an incomparably sharp aura behind him. When he turned around to look, his mind buzzed and instantly went blank. Gong Sun Long was not dead. It was a gigantic nine-headed snake that seemed to be as tall as the heavens. Its upper body held up the heavens and its lower body held the earth in place. Of the 9 snake heads, one of them had already been blasted open and was dripping with blood. The mouths of the remaining 8 snake heads were like black holes. The deepest part of the mouths seemed to be endless darkness and the boundless universe. 9-headed King Heaven Devourer. Below the stage, Shangguan Lan suddenly cried out in alarm when she saw the huge 9-headed snake. Divine light flashed in her beautiful eyes, and she could no longer maintain her calmness on her flawless face, revealing a worried expression. The 9-headed King Heaven Devourer serpent could devour heaven and earth, and refine all living things. It was born with the cultivation base of a sage, and once it reached a certain level, it would become an earthly emperor. According to the records, in ancient times, a 9-headed King Heaven Devourer serpent had caused great chaos in an ancient city in the central continent, and caused a rain of blood. In the end, the 9-headed King Heaven Devourer serpent was killed. However, the city, which was guarded by numerous powerful organizations, was riddled with holes, and not a single person was left alive. Chapter 2077. Big Bro Goat. Shangguan Lan said anxiously. Her heart was racing like ants on a hot pan, and she almost couldn't hold back the urge to attack. Wild dog, you hurt my martial soul. I'll make sure you never get reincarnated. Gong Sun Long's image appeared in the eyes of the 8 snakeheads, and before he could even speak, one of the snakeheads lunged toward Yang Qi. Even as Chu Yang realized what was happening behind him, it was too late to react. To the astonishment of everyone present, he was swallowed up and cut off from the outside world. The moment he was swallowed into the snake's belly, Chu Yang realized that it wasn't endless darkness. Instead, he seemed to have been swallowed into a dilapidated world. Everywhere he looked was a stretch of ruins. The air of desolation surged and filled the air. This is a dilapidated world. Yang Qi wasn't flustered at all. Although things had gone completely out of his control, he had long since prepared for the worst. But now, the worst had happened. After eliminating all possible factors, he was certain that he could kill Gong Sun Long with a single blow. Therefore, he attacked without hesitation, unleashing an attack that he had been preparing for a long time. And yet, in the end, he had failed. Not a single person or living creature remained. Silence, incomparable silence. Chu Yang was very calm, and didn't rush to make a move. Instead, he focused on the situation. Gong Sun Long was even more terrifying than Jing Wuming had anticipated. King Heaven Devourer's snake martial soul was even more terrifying than he had anticipated. He had 9 heads, each of which represented a life. In other words, Gong Sun Long had 9 lives. He was very strong. Yang Qi couldn't help but sigh. If he wanted to kill Gong Sun Long, he would have to kill him 9 times. Unfortunately, he didn't have that many opportunities. As soon as Chu Yang arrived, the dilapidated minor world began to shrink down. Magical symbols appeared, along with streams of energy that seemed to be primal chaos energy, or wasteland energy. It was both bizarre and terrifying. The small world also began to blur. After shrinking to the limit, it seemed to have become a cage. It was pitch black, as if it was connected to a terrifying prison. It was dark and gloomy, and filled with a devilish quality. Just where am I? I'm trapped in this dark prison. If I don't die, I'll be completely assimilated. Bang bang bang. Chu Yang didn't wait any longer. He began to bombard the dark prison in an attempt to break out. The world shook while the heavens and the earth were overturned. However, it was limited to this expanse of the heavens and the earth, and the enormous fluctuations formed from it were utterly unable to spread to the outside world. The dark prison was extremely sturdy. Clang, clang. Accompanied by Chu Yang's continuous bombardment, the sound of a bell suddenly burst forth. Only then did he suddenly realize that the dark prison had turned into a large golden bell. Master, the other party knows that you are going to break free. He must have gone crazy, so he wants to use your combat power to refine his own divine weapon. The Ice Kuan, who had been silent all this time, spoke at this time. What a good plan. Chu Yang frowned. Gong Sun Long actually treated him like a blacksmith and helped him forge a divine weapon. Let's see if your golden bell is harder than my fist. Clang, clang. Chu Yang punched again and again. His punches were as heavy as mountains as they smashed on the golden bell, causing the entire place to tremble and resonate loudly with the bell. The golden bell was resplendent, and various runes appeared on the bell. The bell rang leisurely, as if it was some kind of supreme scripture or the sound of the great Tao. It was transmitted along with the golden ripples. Along with Chu Yang's fierce bombardment, densely packed characters appeared and turned into scriptures. They fell off from the bell and turned into a heavenly net. They fell down, wanting to trap him and refine him inside. This is Gong Sun Long's Tao. Chu Yang narrowed his eyes. After the Ice Kuan's reminder, he completely understood. He was trapped here. Not only did he have to compete with the bell, but he also had to compete with Gong Sun Long's Tao. He hadn't reached the Nirvana realm, so he couldn't release the Tao flame. Otherwise, he could use the Nirvana flame to burn Gong Sun Long's Tao and divine weapon. Now, it was a little troublesome. He was afraid that he could only break through by force and refine Gong Sun Long's Tao. Chapter 2078. The battle between Gong Sun Long and Chu Yang had suddenly changed frequently. It was extremely fierce, and their methods were unimaginable. Everyone was stunned. They couldn't understand the battle between the two. They had completely lost the basis to judge the outcome of the battle. However, after Chu Yang was swallowed into the snake's stomach, there was no movement for a long time. Some people began to cheer. Some were happy, some were worried. Shangguan Lan and the others were extremely nervous. The parrot could not help but take action. In the snake's stomach, Chu Yang thought for a while. His body became crystal clear like a godhead. Lines of rules gathered in his hand. His hand was like a demonic blade. This was the condensation of his Tao. His body itself was a godhead that carried his own Tao. Gong Sun Long had calculated that he would not be able to release the nirvana flame. However, he did not expect this. With a slash of his hand, there was no resistance. The net was cut in half like a piece of paper. How could Chu Yang be afraid of Gong Sun Long in a battle of martial arts? How could he be weaker than Gong Sun Long? Although Gong Sun Long's Tao was strong, it was still far from Chu Yang's. The condensation of Chu Yang's Tao was formed from the condensation of the Destiny Twins' martial spirits in this strange world. This kind of process was like the process of the formation of the heavenly Tao. Therefore, it could be said that his Tao was the embryonic form of the heavenly Tao. This was also the reason why it was difficult for him to improve his cultivation. The improvement of his cultivation was comparable to the growth of a world. After cutting open Gong Sun Long's Tao, Chu Yang's acupoints lit up one after another like dazzling stars. His meridians were like the lines of a formation, and the 100 heavenly caves in his lower abdomen were like the centers of a formation. Chu Yang's body was like the rotation of a formation, and in the blink of an eye, he was like an eternal divine furnace, dazzling with divine light. Dang! He punched the golden bell again. The golden bell shook violently and immediately caved in. However, it was like a piece of flesh. It wriggled and smoothed out the dent. However, it was still shaking. Chu Yang went completely mad. His fists were like hammers as he furiously smashed the golden bell. After dozens of punches, a catcher sound was heard as cracks appeared on the golden bell's body. Dang! Dang! In the last dozen or so punches, the bell cracked even faster and exploded with a bang. Countless fragments shot out, even forming a golden rain that filled the sky. Hiss! Just as Chu Yang was about to break free from the golden bell, a 9-headed snake that had been lying in wait for a long time suddenly pounced out. The snake opened its mouth like a black hole, and endless darkness swallowed Chu Yang whole with a whoosh. Divine weapon hidden edge. Gong Sun Long had made arrangements in the golden bell, and the real danger had just arrived. Chu Yang was swallowed into another world and couldn't help but be shocked. He thought to himself, in a battle of life and death, I really can't be careless at all. Zap zap. In an unfamiliar world, a loud metallic sound rang out. The moment Chu Yang saw this world, he was horrified. In this world, there were countless corpses. The entire world was filled with corpses. It was like an ocean of corpses. This world of corpses was like a place where the heavenly Tao disposed of corpses. After the world's creatures died, their corpses would gather here. When the vast world of corpses suddenly imprinted in Chu Yang's eyes, he felt that countless corpses were forcefully stuffed into his perception. He became a huge tomb, frozen from head to toe. Chapter 2079. What the hell is going on? Chu Yang thought, his eyes going wide as he looked around at the shocking world around him. The world of corpses wasn't static. In the very center of the world, countless corpses caved in, revealing an enormous millstone that was grinding away at the corpses. The sound of metal also rang out from there. When the creatures fell into the millstone, they were crushed like beans, falling into a black hole at the very center of the millstone. Black smoke billowed out, and then everything disappeared without a trace. Don't tell me this is the 9-headed king snake's stomach. It devours everything, grinds them down, and then transforms them into power? Even as that thought appeared in his mind, he felt a powerful gravitational force pulling him toward the millstone. He was shocked. The space around his lower abdomen suddenly collapsed. With a loud rumble, it was as if the door to a new world had opened wide. Endless auspicious lights erupted. Then, a total of 99 booms rang out, one after another, filling the 99 heavens. Chu Yang didn't dare to hesitate, and immediately called upon his 100 heavenly caves. Following the opening of all 100 heavenly abodes, it was as if there were stars shining behind him, dazzling everyone's eyes. 100 heavenly caves corresponded to 100 worlds. In the face of 100 worlds, the gravitational force was so weak that it didn't even budge. "My lord, eat them all," the Ice Kuan said, causing Chu Yang's jaw to drop. His food wasn't corpses, and the sight of corpses being ground down was nauseating. How could he possibly eat them? "My lord, this isn't real. It's just the manifestation of the 9-headed king snake's innate gift." Chu Yang couldn't stand it. It was too disgusting. "If you don't eat them, my lord, you won't be able to get out." Yang Qi was at a loss for words, but at the same time, he found himself feeling much more relaxed. "My lord, this is a stroke of good fortune. I'm afraid that Eastern Maggot doesn't know what's going on. Otherwise, my lord wouldn't have been able to deal with him so easily." It sounded like the truth. "Who?" Chu Yang let out a long breath and became serious again. This was a matter of life and death, so he couldn't joke about it. Behind him, the 100 worlds began to converge, turning into a giant that was 1,000 jong tall. Its large hand reached out, covering the sky and covering the sun as it grabbed the enormous millstone. Rumble. This world shook intensely, the heavens collapsing and earth caving in, starting to break apart. The millstone shook violently, but it was like a living fish that couldn't break free. With a crack, it was swallowed into the giant's stomach like a pancake. There was no need for Chu Yang to actively devour the endless corpses, as well as the churning flesh, blood, and bones. Along with the millstone, they converged into rivers of death and were all thrown into the giant's mouth. After that, Chu Yang began to vomit. Although those were not real, he had eyes. He was a visual animal. Rumbling sounds echoed out as Gong Suanlong's 9-headed heaven devourer serpent collapsed, and Chu Yang returned. However, the world didn't seem to accept it, and he felt like Qin Shi Huang had been resurrected 2,000 years later, and was looking at his own terracotta soldiers. Gong Sunlong was one of the members of the terracotta soldiers, and his posture was perfect. How could Yang Qi let go of such a heaven-sent opportunity? Swish! Chu Yang dashed over and slapped Gong Sunlong's head into his chest. He didn't feel anything at all. So easy. Bam! As Gong Suanlong's second life faded away, his corpse fell to the ground and vanished. Only then did the terracotta soldiers come back to life, and yet, they didn't seem to be able to speak. Chapter 2080. Big Bro Goat. A smile blossomed on Shangguan Lan's beautiful face. It was like the first spring breeze, blowing past and awakening hundreds of flowers, colorful and brilliant. "He actually won. Unbelievable," Nangongxing said, still in disbelief. Chu Yang had been devoured by the 9-headed king heaven devourer snake for some time, and Chu Yang still hadn't managed to free himself. Then the crowd went crazy, and some of them even began to attack the parrot and the others. Gong Sunlong's victory was a victory for the East continent. Nangongxing found it ironic that Chu Yang hadn't died yet. Instead, the madly laughing faces turned into slack-jawed expressions. He wants to change the East continent's view of the Eastern wilderness. But it won't be easy. He was from the East continent, so it was only natural that he knew what the people there were thinking. Whoosh! Everyone's attention fell on Chu Yang. Amidst the dead silence, the sudden appearance of the space-piercing deity was magnified infinitely, and appeared particularly obvious. Immediately, everyone saw a figure in the field, frantically running away like a stray dog. Gong Sunlong. Gong Sunlong was actually fleeing. Everyone was shocked for a moment, but then they realized that if the 9-headed king heaven devourer snake couldn't do anything to Chu Yang, then what else could he do other than flee? Chu Yang was also taken aback. Never in his wildest dreams could he have guessed that something like this would happen. But then, he snapped out of his daze. "Do you really think you can escape?" It was the yin-yang 4 phases steps versus the yin-yang 5 phases steps. Chu Yang was the first to catch up. The sword of contradiction appeared in his hand, and he stabbed it out like a god of the underworld. "If King Yama wanted you dead, who would dare to let you live until dawn?" A vortex appeared on the blade of the sword, which was none other than the reincarnation vortex. Chu Yang was using his own reincarnation divine ability, but he was hiding it within his sword technique. I'll take your third life. Chu Yang's sword was unstoppable, and filled with boundless power. If one nation tried to stop another, then the other would be destroyed. Blood sprayed out. Gong Sun Long did not have any effective resistance at all. His greatest trump card had been broken, and in a short moment, he had lost all his courage. The head was sent flying by the sword, but the headless body was still running wildly before it mysteriously disappeared. When he reappeared, there was not a trace of blood on his face, as if he was made of gold paper. However, he seemed to have shaken off his fear, and his eyes were filled with extreme resentment. Wild dog, you can't kill me, and you don't have the chance to kill me. I admit, Shua. The sword pierced out like the last ray of light before the night fell. Chu Yang arrived in an instant and pierced through Gong Sun Long's throat. Blood spurted out as the head flew up. What a fast sword, what a shocking sword. Gong Sun Long had a smile on his face, as if he wasn't the one being killed. He exclaimed, "You even have space techniques. What an amazing space technique. It's almost teleportation. However, you still can't kill me, haha." Gong Sun Long's head laughed wildly in the air. Wild dog, I admit defeat. Do you still dare to kill me? As soon as he finished speaking, Gong Sun Long's body disappeared, but his laughter was still echoing. This time, he reappeared with a mocking smile on his face. Wild dog, today's hatred will be returned 100-fold. You won't have the chance. Chu Yang's voice was as cold as ice. The 6 academies' combined competition was cruel, but once the opponent admitted defeat, one could not kill. Otherwise, one would have to bear the consequences. However, he had already made up his mind to kill, and he would kill anyone who tried to stop him. With a clang, a sword light shot out in all directions. Gong Sun Long did not resist at all and allowed his head to be chopped off again. Chapter 2081. I don't need you to worry. Chu Yang's killing intent surged, but his heart was full of worries. Is that so? Gong Suanlong's mockery became even more contemptuous. In the end, he said, 6 leaders, aren't you embarrassed? Do you still care about the dignity of the 6th campus? Gong Sun Long was truly terrifying, causing people to tremble in fear. His body disappeared and then reappeared. These were his 6 lives. Chu Yang didn't care. When he was about to attack again, a few loud roars burst out from the closed spectator stands. Vast saint aura blanketed the sky. Glittering and translucent flowers of the great Tao fell like rain. Heaven and earth trembled. Rolling thunder resounded throughout the world. In an instant, the firmament was dyed red. When the saint was angry, the world changed color. When the killing intent was triggered, the heavens sent out killing intent. Everyone couldn't help but kneel down and tremble. Bang! 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 Chu Yang felt as if he was hit by 6 heavy hammers. He spat out 6 mouthfuls of blood. His whole body was frozen. Is this the power of a saint? His words are the law. It's not just for show. Almost all the leaders of the 6th campus wanted to stop Chu Yang from continuing to kill. What they thought would happen. Logically speaking, Chu Yang was now a dead man. However, his body had become a god, so it formed a certain resistance. In addition, the Ice Kuan secretly helped him, so he was still alive. Haha, wild dog, your fixed posture is really beautiful. Gong Sun Long laughed even more wildly. How could Chu Yang not kill such a person? If you cut the grass without removing the roots, there would be endless trouble in the future. He also felt the power of a saint. At this moment, he couldn't even speak. Wild dog, die. Rumble, rumble, rumble. Suddenly, a cold voice came out of nowhere. However, it didn't come from the closed spectator stands. It came from an inexplicable space. The voice was cold, oppressive, and domineering. It was like an emperor who ruled the world and was as majestic as a prison. Qianzi, it's Qianzi's voice. All of a sudden, many people started to shout. The members of the Heaven and Earth Party of the Sky Court became excited as if they had been injected with chicken blood. They showed an expression of worship and prostrated themselves in worship. Greetings. Qianzi. Qianzi. The entire place was in chaos. The name Qianzi resounded like thunder. Who hadn't heard of it before? This was a legendary figure who was extremely elusive. However, he had actually appeared. This was truly surprising. Qianzi was the synonym of strength among the students of the 6 great academies. He was lawless and had no regard for anyone else. Even the leaders of the 6 great academies didn't put him in his eyes. He had once turned the East continent upside down, but no one could do anything about him. No one had expected Qianzi to appear at this moment. Qianzi, he actually appeared. Liu Yunpeng, Xia Wanjin, and Xiong Longxiang were shocked. They knew how powerful Qianzi was. What worried the 3 of them the most was that they could clearly hear that Qianzi seemed to have enmity with Chu Yang. Otherwise, with Qianzi's character, why would he bother with Chu Yang? It's him. Shangguan Lan couldn't help but frown. Ji Yinyin turned pale on the spot. She clearly remembered the conflict between Qianzi and the leader of the Sky Court. At that time, the leader of the Sky Court couldn't even capture Qianzi. In the chaos, many high-level members of the 6 great academies were shocked when they learned of Qianzi's arrival. Qianzi. The Sage Master's face was burning hot, revealing a wave of hatred. Back then, he had been sent flying by a slap from Qianzi, losing all his face. The faces of the other 5 great academies' masters suddenly turned ugly. The scene was completely out of control. Bang! 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 Every word Qianzi said was a heavy blow to Chu Yang. The shock caused his internal organs to crack. Blood spurted out from his mouth and nose. His 7 orifices were bleeding. A sage. He was extremely shocked. Qianzi was already a sage. Although he deserved to be killed, he didn't intend to kill him immediately. He had a deep hatred and probably wanted to vent his hatred on him. He wouldn't let him die so easily. Rumble. Chapter 2082. Qianzi finally arrived and walked out of the gate of time and space. The supreme power that could shatter space seemed to force space to submit to him, making him look like an emperor, the ruler of heaven and earth. Everything in the world had to submit to him. Even the heavenly Tao had to be controlled. He was a supreme existence, the meaning of all existence. Without him, there would be nothing. Heaven and earth shouldn't exist. Dong. With one step, heaven and earth shook. The air pressed down and sank. Everyone felt like they were being stepped on, and the ground sank. It seemed like it couldn't bear the weight of Qianzi's body. Everyone was so suffocated that they couldn't breathe. Fear and trepidation filled them. In the beginning, Qianzi was already a half-step saint. He was able to fight against a saint. He wasn't someone ordinary people could compare to. It was rumored that he had no parents, no siblings, and was born by heaven and earth. He was the son of heaven and earth. Such a person was born to be above millions of people. He was incomparably noble. The East continent was simply a disgrace to his status. Only the members of the Chengquan party were nervous, excited, worshipping, and proud. They saw their leader, their majestic leader, looking at Qianzi and the others as if they saw their bright future. With one step, he stepped on the space above Chu Yang's head. The power that the leaders of the 6 academies exerted on him instantly shattered and was replaced by an even more terrifying power. In an instant, he was like an ant that had been stepped on. The sound of bones cracking came from his body. He couldn't help but kneel down. He couldn't resist. If his physical body hadn't become a god, his spiritual body would have been condensed like a godhead. Both of them were incomparably powerful. How could his bones be broken? He didn't even have the chance to struggle. He had to kneel down like a servant, waiting for his master's arrival in fear and trepidation. Dong. Qianzi stepped on the ground again. The sound of a great bell resounded, causing heaven and earth to tremble. The pressure on Chu Yang was even greater. The saber and sword martial spirits were making clanging sounds, while the dragon martial spirit was emitting a roar. That was the only reason why he was not forced to kneel down. However, the ground under his feet was unable to bear the pressure and directly sank. He was much shorter than everyone else, and only half of his body was above the ground. Qianzi finally revealed his body. He was about 27 or 28 years old. It was hard to tell whether he was a man or a woman. His body was extremely small. His eyes were like the sun and the moon. His flesh and blood were the earth. His bones were the pillars of heaven, and his hair was the grass. The aura around him seemed to be released by the heavenly Tao. With his hands behind his back, he was as straight as a pillar of heaven. He was as straight as a divine spear, piercing the sky. Qianzi. Everyone. It was Qianzi. Everyone felt as if they were facing the heavens. They knelt on the ground and lowered their heads. This is Qianzi. He is indeed incomparably powerful. He is like an immemorial divine mountain or even a great emperor. The pressure on Chu Yang's body increased. Even if he resisted with all his might, his legs were gradually bent. He was about to kneel down. You are that dog. Qianzi looked down from high above. He looked at Chu Yang as if he was looking at an ant. His voice was like heaven's might. It was like 10,000 mountains. Dog. Chu Yang was furious. However, he couldn't make a sound under the great pressure. He roared in his heart, "Who can make me kneel? Even the heavens and earth can't." He communicated with his light soul. A supreme aura of light came from the deepest part of his body. It was like 100,000 flames gushing out. His body emitted light like an eternal sun. Kachacha. Chapter 2083. Chu Yang wasn't afraid at all. He raised his head and stared at Qianzi. You seem to be very angry. Boom. A single stone caused 1,000 ripples. Chu Yang actually dared to speak to Qianzi like this. Gong Sunlong couldn't help but be shocked. Under such circumstances, if he were facing Qianzi, he definitely wouldn't dare to speak like this. His words were filled with sarcasm and ridicule. You really do have some dog guts. Anger gradually appeared on Qianzi's face, but it soon subsided. However, his voice became more dignified and heavy, as if the weight of the entire world was pressing down. However, you do have some ability. Under my pressure, you were able to endure for so long without kneeling. You do have the qualifications to be arrogant, but this is not enough for me to pardon your sins. You ruined my plan in the eastern wilderness. How should you be punished? Qianzi's sudden shout made Chu Yang feel as if he was an unforgivable sinner. Even 100 deaths wouldn't be enough to atone for his sins. His heart was filled with guilt, and he was constantly repenting. He was about to kneel down and beg for forgiveness. Wang. However, there was a bit of intelligence in his soul that wasn't chaotic. It blossomed with a dazzling light, causing others to be shaken awake. He was shocked and said in his heart, "Saints are truly terrifying. If they say that I am guilty, then I have to agree. I feel that I am guilty, and my soul is almost completely twisted." This was truly shocking. A saint's words were law. With a single thought, they could change the world. Every move they made contained supreme power that mortals couldn't resist. Qianzi only said that he was guilty, but Chu Yang almost had no choice but to agree. His thoughts were about to be completely changed, turning him into a puppet without thoughts of his own. He might even be a walking corpse. The power of the soul was truly terrifying. Chu Yang's heart was already drenched in cold sweat. If it weren't for his extraordinary soul, he would have already lost himself and become another person. And all of this happened in an instant. Ha ha. Immediately, he laughed loudly and mockingly. What a bandit's logic. You broke into my home and committed crimes, so you want to kill me and set fire to my home. It's not wrong for me to cut you with a knife, but it's also a crime. Bug, what kind of dog fart are you? His voice was very loud, and it resounded throughout the entire place. Insects. Everyone turned pale with fright. They couldn't believe what they were hearing. What guts. Not only did he rebuke Qianzi, he actually insulted Qianzi by calling him a bug. How audacious. No adjectives were enough to describe Chu Yang's impudence. Yi. Qianzi was very surprised. His sun-moon-shaped eyes couldn't help but stare deeply into Chu Yang's eyes. You can actually resist my mental strength. It seems that you have obtained some sort of supreme opportunity, which is why you dare to be so impudent in front of me. But if I say you are guilty, then you are guilty. If I ask you to kneel, then you have to kneel. Spirit force was formless and colorless. However, Chu Yang could clearly sense that it was pervasive. It was like 100,000 heavenly soldiers invading his spirit, wanting to change it. This was undoubtedly the most terrifying thing. A person could be killed, but they definitely could not be defeated. However, the power of a saint could kill you and change your mind. Tai-bai jinxing. Chu Yang did his best to resist and let out a bellow. A loud rumbling sound rang out, and the void behind him suddenly dimmed. A stretch of boundless starry sky opened up, filled with countless stars. A supreme figure suddenly stepped out from the boundless spacetime, appearing in the starry sky and landing behind Chu Yang. Using the 7 kneels of the Tai-bai jinxing, he activated the imprint that the Tai-bai jinxing had left behind in the world to fend off that terrifying spirit force. Still not enough. Chapter 2084. When the night sky appeared, the world was already dark. When he used the demon soul to communicate with the imprint left behind by the darkness demon emperor, the entire world became completely dark. Soon, a supreme dark figure with surging demonic chi appeared, as if he had come from the deepest part of the universe, the darkest space-time. Dawn. When the supreme dark figure landed, heaven and earth resonated. The remaining light receded, and the darkness deepened. There was no trace of light at all. Everyone only saw the phantoms of the Dark Demon Emperor, the Star Monarch, and Qian Zi. Other than that, everything else was swallowed up by the darkness. However, in just an instant, the heaven and earth returned to normal. Chu Yang was still standing there as straight as a javelin, activating the imprints left behind by the 2 theurches. He was barely able to resist the distortion caused by Qian Zi's spirit force. The Star Lord of the Star Battle Academy, the Darkness Demon Emperor, Qian Zi revealed a shocked expression and muttered to himself, "No wonder a dog like you can stir up so much trouble in the East Continent. Not bad. Give me the method to communicate with the Star Lord and the Darkness Demon Emperor, and I'll let you kill yourself. Ha ha." Chu Yang laughed loudly again and roared, "Bug, give me your saint's sauce, and I'll let you kill yourself." Saint's sauce. Qian Zi was a saint. Many people were shocked again. Many of them never thought that Qian Zi had already become a saint. However, Chu Yang's boldness shocked them even more. Since he knew that Qian Zi was already a saint, why did he still dare to be so impudent? Swish. Qian Zi's gaze suddenly turned sharp, and 2 light beams shot down. If it wasn't for the protection of the Star Lord and the Darkness Demon Emperor, Chu Yang would have exploded and turned into ashes. Wild dog, you think I won't dare to kill you because you have something on me? Something on him? Chu Yang was stunned, and the smile on his face disappeared. Soon after, his mind trembled violently. His mind turned at lightning speed, and he suddenly caught a glimpse of a light and guessed a possibility. Then, he connected all his thoughts and laughed again. "So it's you, haha." He was overjoyed. He finally knew who the mastermind was, Qian Zi. Qian Zi had intended to unify the East Continent. He had taken advantage of the 6 Academies' grand competition to carry out his scheme, but he had been thwarted by Chu Yang in the end. Just now, if Qian Zi had not mentioned it, it would have been hard for him to figure it out. Now, he finally understood why Qian Zi had appeared. Qian Zi could no longer tolerate him. Gong Sun Long was useless, so he could only do it himself. At this moment, Nangong Xing was greatly shocked. "It's actually Qian Zi. Qian Zi was the one who killed the saint and made Nangong Xing the scapegoat. He was the mastermind behind everything." At this time, Feng Porlong and Zong Jian finally understood why the Great 6 Academies had hastily settled the matter and kept the peace. This was not only because it was related to the central state, but also because it was related to Qian Zi. The reason why Qian Zi dared to do this was definitely because he had found a strong ally in the Central Plains and had a great backing. Now that the truth had come to light, who knew how many people were instantly enlightened? Their hearts were in turmoil, and they found it difficult to calm down. How could they have thought that there was such a big secret hidden in this? "You deserve to be killed." Qian Zi's expression was extremely unsightly for the first time. Who was he? Chu Yang could guess that he was the mastermind behind the scenes from just a few words, So how could he not know from Chu Yang's words? Chu Yang only knew a little, but he had successfully intimidated him with that. It was a great humiliation, an unprecedented humiliation. He was actually frightened by a dog's little tricks. Ha. Chu Yang sensed Chen Zi's burning killing intent and laughed heartily. He even pointed at Chen Zi and provoked him. Do you dare to kill me? Can you kill me? Who do you think you are, bug? Chapter 2085. Despite Chu Yang's death-seeking provocation, Chen Zi's wrath didn't come. Chen Zi didn't get angry, and the sky didn't change color. Although one couldn't tell if Chen Zi was a man or a woman from his face, one could tell if he was angry. Chen Zi was calmly thinking about how to kill someone. Only then would he feel the most pain, regret, and fear. He said coldly, I can see that you are fearless. Let me see what you are relying on. After a pause, he looked down from above and said again without the slightest emotion, You'd better not disappoint me. Gong Sun Long's previous craziness was a little scary, but the current Chen Zi was even more frightening. The two of them paled in comparison. Chu Yang's eyelids twitched. Although the revenge of an angry person was destructive, it wasn't the most terrifying. Only those who were extremely calm, after careful consideration, would make people shudder with fear. Obviously, Chen Zi belonged to the latter. Chen Zi didn't release his spirit force. Chu Yang was even more certain of this. He looked at the arena again and saw a sea of people kneeling down. He could clearly feel Chen Zi's might. The sky was still cloudless, as if there was a diligent woman scrubbing it clean. It was incomparably clean, and one couldn't even find a wisp of cloud. Although an earth-shattering battle had taken place here and caused a huge commotion, nothing seemed to have changed. Chu Yang felt like he was sitting on pins and needles when facing such an enemy. Then, he calmed down. Then I'll start my performance. Please enjoy. The Chu clan's style started. Suddenly, Chu Yang looked at Liu Yunpeng, who was in the crowd, and said with a smile, Peng, that thing wants to kill me. As my younger brother, what do you say? Instantly, everyone's attention was on Liu Yunpeng. However, he wasn't happy at all. He was so angry that his nose became crooked. Chu Hang immediately used him to block the disaster. This was really the best performance of Die together with me. Chen Zi couldn't help but look at Liu Yunpeng. The 6 leaders in the enclosed stands also noticed Liu Yunpeng. Grandson of the Rock Sage. The East Continent's patrol inspector immediately recognized Liu Yunpeng's identity and understood Chu Yang's intention, but he didn't understand why Chu Yang had connections with Liu Yunpeng and the Rock Sage, and even seemed to hold a lot of weight. The leader of the Sky Academy naturally knew about Liu Yunpeng. He also knew about the relationship between Chu Yang and Liu Yunpeng, as well as his relationship with Sage Peng. Chu Hang, this is really unpleasant. Liu Yunpeng looked at Chu Yang with a dark face. He was the first to rush to the front. He was very unwilling and unhappy, but he still said to Chen Zi, if you think that my grandfather can't do anything to you after you kill that bastard Chu Hang, I suggest you kill him immediately. Everyone could hear Liu Yunpeng's reluctance, and it was precisely this kind of reluctance that made people see that he had a close relationship with Chu Yang. Chen Zi didn't know Liu Yunpeng, nor did he know that Liu Yunpeng was the grandson of the Rock Sage. However, he was a sage and could easily find out everything from others. Rock Sage. His face seemed to be stained with a few spots of black mud, and his cold face was slightly gloomy. In an instant, he suddenly became lively and even looked a little cute. At least, this kind of Chen Zi was more humane and not so frightening. Good fortune lurks in disaster, and good fortune relies on disaster. Chapter 2086. The sky seemed to be bluer, as if he was happier and more open-minded. Shia, this thing wants to mess with me. What do you say? Xia Wanjin saw Chu Yang's smile and felt extremely disgusted. His face was as black as the bottom of a pot. What he couldn't accept was the 2 words Xia. The sky is blue, but Xia's face is black. Chu Yang smiled and said, I think it's because the sky is too blue. The Sun Chick hugged Xia passionately. There's no barrier between them, so they can get close to each other. I wish Xia and the Sun Chick's love will last forever. Waraha. The parrot couldn't hold it in anymore. It fell to the ground and rolled around. Kaka. Xia Wanjin gritted his teeth. He wanted to end this hellish torment immediately. He looked at Chen Zi angrily. Do you know the Xia family of the central state? If you can escape the Xia family's pursuit, I really hope that you can immediately take this bastard to the Sun Chick and have a passionate love affair. The Xia family of Zhengzhou, the descendant of the Shang Emperor. Chen Zi's face was even more gloomy. Although the Shang Emperor had been dead for tens of thousands of years and the Xia family of Zhengzhou had almost sunk to the bottom of the valley, a starving camel was still bigger than a horse. Damn it! Chen Zi's anger rose. He wanted to roar and explode, but he didn't want the wild dog to see his uneasiness. He could only try to keep calm. That dog, is there anything else? That's not enough. Are you still disappointed? Oh. Chen Zi only responded indifferently. He didn't like Chu Yang's arrogance, and he wouldn't compromise with a dog. This was his bottom line. However, he had to consider whether he could bear the consequences. Are you trying to say that if that's all, I can die? Chu Yang didn't have many trump cards. After Liu Yunpeng and Xia Wanjin, it was Shangguanlan's turn. He suddenly hesitated. With his hands behind his back, he looked at the rolling mountains in the distance. In the lush greenery, he saw a pair of birds flying together. He couldn't help but think, Shangguanlan is my fiancé. Until now, I still don't dare to let the people of Central Province know. Previously, he had announced on the spot in the Sky Academy that Shangguanlan was his fiancé. But today was different. If he did so on such an occasion, Zhengzhou State would definitely know. However, what was there not to do? As a man, he couldn't find a reason. If you think that's not enough, then I'll introduce you to someone else. Chu Yang didn't look at Chen Zi. Instead, he kept looking at the pair of birds. He said, but before that, let me first tell you about my illness. I'm very vain. Or there's something else besides vanity. I'm not sure. But I'm sure that you'll be very uncomfortable. I'm very confident about this, because I'm such a person. It's easy for me to make people unhappy. Many people were very familiar with this, but they really didn't expect that things would turn out like this. This was really a kind of ability, a great ability. Who could let Chen Zi listen to such nonsense for so long? But they also shuddered. How much did Chen Zi hate Chu Yang? She's my fiancé. Chu Yang suddenly looked at Shangguanlan with a smile, officially conveying all this to everyone present and to the people of Zhengzhou State. In an instant, all eyes were cast on Shangguanlan. However, there was a fog that almost completely blocked their sight. They could only vaguely see a graceful figure in it. Chapter 2087. At this moment, Shangguanlan lowered her head shyly. It was very charming, but no one could appreciate it. She was sweet and happy, but she was also embarrassed. All kinds of emotions mixed together, and it was extremely complicated. You should be envious of this plaything, and you should be jealous to death. Chu Yang was like a proud rooster. He puffed out his chest and said proudly, even if you don't now, I promise you will be like this later. Are you trying to say that you are just a useless snack who relies on women? When Chen Zi looked at Shangguanlan, his eyelids twitched. Even though he had the cultivation of a sage, he still couldn't see through the layer of fog surrounding Shangguanlan. It really shocked him. Chu Yang smiled and said, relying on women? That's it, right? You think it's a shame, but I think it's a blessing. Although I say it beautifully, I don't do it beautifully. Maybe whenever there is gossip or my fiancé is too strong, my little pride will act up. However, this is definitely the direction I work hard for. There's nothing wrong with it. Women are stronger than men. It's not like they want to die. However, in this world, perhaps only Chu Yang could say such nonsense. Naturally, he was telling the truth. He really couldn't say or do what he said. Not only have you embarrassed a man, but you're also like a sissy. Chen Zi criticized seriously. He seemed to be unable to stand Chu Yang's nagging. The veins on his face couldn't help but twitch. Haha. Chu Yang couldn't help but laugh. This is also why I feel that I'm better than you. It's also why I feel superior in this world. I will never discriminate against women. Damn you. Qianzi was furious. He couldn't help but squint his eyes dangerously. Seeing this, Chu Yang continued to laugh. Of course, I'm just saying it beautifully, but I might not be able to do it. I admit that I'm nagging, but I won't admit that it's because I can't control myself. It will only make you more unhappy. How dare he? Qianzi's patience had finally reached its limit. He was like a balloon that had been lightly pricked by a needle, causing a huge storm to erupt. Killing intent surged out. Along with his killing intent, his spirit force gushed out, drowning out Chu Yang, forming a spirit force field. In the blink of an eye, Chu Yang's body was distorted. Ka-cha-cha. The sound of bones breaking rang out, but in an instant, Chu Yang's body had lost count of how many bones had been broken. His body was like a twisted towel. Under the extreme twisting, his meridians were sprained, his muscles were torn, and he was dripping with blood. He no longer looked like a human. Wife, this thing, he keeps on bullying me, and wants to kill me. He was barely able to shout. Wang. At this moment, everyone's ears were pierced by a buzzing sound. After that, their minds were reformatted so that they could store something completely new. Their minds went blank, and the spirit force that was acting on Chu Yang was directly cut off. Qianzi turned pale with fright. Rumble. On Shangguan Lan's side, without any warning, the entire void started to tremble. Behind her, a brush, ink, paper, and inkstone appeared in the void. A phantom held a brush and wrote one beautiful article after another. Every word seemed to be written about the rise and fall of the dynasty, the heroes and sinners in the history of Heavenly Soul World, the comments on the ancient events, the explanations of the various truths of heaven and earth, and so on. It even wrote about the long history of Heavenly Soul World. Chapter 2088. Emperor Wen. Finally, he recognized the figure and cried out in shock. His entire body was trembling, and his heart was filled with fear. Emperor Wen was, of course, a great emperor. He was also the master and leader of the Central Continent Divine Dynasty. His status was incomparably revered. Even the divine emperors of the Central Continent Divine Dynasty had to treat him with great respect, not daring to show any disrespect. Once Emperor Wen got angry, the Central Continent would definitely be shaken. In addition, Emperor Wen was extremely supported by the Central Continent God Dynasty, and he was also a cornerstone of the Central Continent God Dynasty. It was once said that half of the credit for the stability of the Central Continent God Dynasty belonged to Emperor Wen, and his achievements almost overshadowed his masters. In addition, even if Emperor Wen's achievements overshadowed his masters, and his prestige was greater than the God Emperor of the Central Continent God Dynasty, the God Emperor would never suspect him. Because that was Emperor Wen, who was loyal to the Emperor and loved his country. He would never do something as disgraceful as going against the Emperor. Such a thing would never happen. Although Emperor Wen's strength had reached the level of Great Emperor, he did not accept titles like Emperor Wen or King Wen, as he thought it was a kind of disobedience. Therefore, the two words Emperor Wen were never heard of in the Central Continent, and the people of the Central Continent called him Duke Ju instead of Emperor Wen. Qianzi did not expect that a mere wild dog would have such heaven-defying luck to have such a fiancé, who was closely related to Emperor Wen. Duke Ju. At this moment, in the enclosed stands, the inspector of the East Continent suddenly jumped up from his seat, his voice trembling, and his eyes filled with disbelief. The leaders of the 6 academies were also instantly panicked. They were high and mighty in the East Continent, and everyone was like an ant to them. However, there was always a mountain higher than the one before, and they were just ants in front of Emperor Wen. Fortunately, Emperor Wen was a scholar, a reasonable scholar, and what they did was reasonable. However, they instantly realized that this was actually the most terrible thing. Because of Emperor Wen's character, Chu Yang and Shangguan Lan's engagement was very firm. Despising the poor and loving the rich, and even breaking off the engagement, such a thing would probably not happen. In this way, Chu Yang's identity would be completely different, and there was almost a possibility of it being shaken. Of course, the 6 of them were unwilling to see such a thing happen. As for the sacred sovereign and the heads of the 6 academies, there was even less of a need to talk about them. Their actions would probably bring about a great disaster, and they would die without a burial ground. Shangguan Lan's move was like throwing a deep water bomb. Many people never thought that she had such a noble identity. To be honest, Chu Yang did not expect this at all. He didn't know what kind of person Emperor Wen was or how powerful he was. He didn't even need to know that he was a great emperor. All he needed to know was Qianzi's shock and fear. Qianzi was a domineering, arrogant, and conceited person. There weren't many things that could make him feel fear, and even fewer things that could make him tremble. Even a great emperor might not be able to do so. Chu Yang wasn't just spouting nonsense. Take himself for example, wasn't he also looking down on the rulers of the God realm? In fact, he even took pleasure in provoking the rulers of the God realm. Qianzi's arrogance should not be inferior to his. Therefore, he smiled bitterly. If he wanted to marry Shangguan Lan, he was afraid that it would be extremely difficult, even more difficult than ascending to the heavens. In other words, it was impossible. Chapter 2089. In the midst of the shock, the East Continent inspector came out from the closed stands. He had a fair complexion and lived like a prince, like a rich lord. He seemed to have no cultivation and only had one eye. As soon as he appeared in front of the crowd, he cupped his fists at Shangguan Lan and asked carefully, "Are you the divine fragrance lady?" Her beautiful face was not close, but her fragrance was overwhelming. It was not the fragrance of flowers or powder, but a strange fragrance that refreshed the mind and helped one comprehend the Tao. Shangguan Lan's whole body was fragrant, and that kind of fragrance could help one comprehend the Tao, so she was called the Divine Fragrance Lady. In addition, she was very talented, so many people called her the Divine Fragrance Lady. This was only one. As far as the East Continent inspector knew, the identity of the woman in front of him, if he guessed correctly, she should have many familiar titles, such as Flower Pistil Fairy, 100-Flower Princess, Ninth Heaven Mysterious Lady, just to name a few. The reason for this was that Shangguan Lan, apart from the strange fragrance on her body, her appearance was also amazing. In addition to other things, there were many descriptions for her. Moreover, stunning beauties had always been the focus of people's discussions. "My surname is Shangguan." Shangguan Lan did not admit the so-called Divine Fragrance Lady, but directly said her surname. Her voice was like a fairy's voice, very pleasant to listen to, like a fairy's song that briefly sounded in people's ears, immediately making people feel as if there was a stream flowing through their hearts, cleansing their souls. To be honest, the East Continent inspector did not know the real name of the Divine Fragrance Lady, and he was not qualified to know, but in an instant, he was sure of Shangguan Lan's identity. There were not many women who could calm people's hearts with just her voice, and those related to Emperor Wen were even fewer. Therefore, the woman in front of him must be the Divine Fragrance Lady, Emperor Wen's most precious granddaughter, and he could not allow her to suffer any grievances. The East Continent inspector's palms were sweating. Sun Jiming greets the Divine Fragrance Lady. "Greetings to Mr. Sun, please don't make me feel unworthy." When Sun Jiming heard Shangguan Lan's humble words, he could not help but sigh in his heart. As expected of Emperor Wen's granddaughter, there is not the slightest arrogance, and she does not make people feel that she is overbearing. He was slightly relieved. Shangguan Lan was well educated and reasonable. Even if she didn't like him, she wouldn't make things difficult for him. As for how much he would be disliked, that would depend on his performance later. However, he didn't make a sound. What he needed to do now was to protect Chu Yang's life. Although it was unknown how many people in the central continent would want to kill Chu Yang after knowing about him, but that was a matter for the future. At this moment, Chu Yang absolutely could not be lost. Sun Jiming was extremely wary of Qianzi. Silently, he landed behind Chu Yang. His nerves were tense, and he was vigilant against Qianzi's various actions. And he felt that this was enough. Shangguan Lan would definitely understand what he meant. When Qianzi saw Sun Jiming's actions, it was just as Chu Yang had said. At this moment, he was truly envious. He was so jealous that he was about to go crazy. His knuckles turned white as he clenched his fists, wanting to smash Chu Yang with a single punch. However, he had no choice but to restrain himself. In fact, he even had to control his spirit force. He really couldn't afford to offend Chu Yang. There are definitely not many men like him, right? In an instant, Shangguan Lan became the center of the world. She was like an empress. Her voice was extremely cold, but it was filled with majesty. Anger and killing intent were faintly discernible, causing Sun Jiming's heart to skip a beat. This Chu Yang's position in the divine fragrance lady's heart is definitely not low. How could he be the only one? The hearts of the leaders of the 6 campuses sank. Chapter 2090. Then you should understand, right? Shangguan Lan's voice grew colder. Whoosh. Qianzi didn't say a word. After struggling for a while, he left with Gongsun Long and disappeared in an instant. Damn it. Long Xiaojun was so angry that he was trembling. His hands and feet surged with power, but he tried to restrain himself. However, he couldn't restrain himself in the end. With a loud bang, the ground shattered, and dust soared into the sky. Afterwards, he sensed an extremely cold killing intent land on his body. His entire body went rigid, a clump of flames burning fiercely within him. Everyone's gazes fell on him. Immediately, he was at a loss as if he was naked. His face turned red in an instant. Chen Borang gritted his teeth. Blood streaks crawled out of his eyes. He was about to burn. The woman he had always admired was trying her best to protect a lowly man. Chu Yang saw Long Xiaojun and Chen Borang. He smiled bitterly in his heart. I don't know how many people like them there are in Zhongzhou. When he thought about it, he realized that things were troublesome. Maybe those people in Zhongzhou would come to Dongju out of jealousy. If so, many forces in Zhongzhou would intervene in Dongju. His situation would be even more worrying. It would be even more difficult for him to make the eastern wilderness rise again in Dongju. There were pros and cons. Chu Yang realized that he hadn't thought it through. He didn't let the ice kraken take action. Instead, he let Shangguan Lan protect him. This greatly shocked Chen Zi, the inspector of Dongju, and the leaders of the 6 academies. However, it also made a big deal out of it. A slight move in one part would affect the whole situation. A woman like Shangguan Lan, who had such a noble identity, was an influential figure. She was the focus of attention. Her every move was likely to cause a big storm. I can't wait any longer. Before those people in Zhongzhou get involved in Dongju, I have to act first. Otherwise, I may never have a chance. Everyone. After making up his mind, he immediately opened his mouth and attracted everyone's attention. Here, in order to prove that I am handsome, I would like to announce a shocking news to everyone. Chu Yang narcissistically flipped the hair in front of his forehead. Then, he said with a smile, after careful consideration, I've decided to slaughter a saint. At first, no one had any reaction, but after a while, there was a loud bang. It was as if a huge meteorite from outer space had fallen into the sea of people. I didn't hear wrongly. Chu Hang actually wants to slaughter a saint. What kind of bullshit ability does he have? How dare you say such things? Aren't you afraid of angering the saints and inviting a fatal disaster? Has Chu Hang gone mad? Has he lost his mind? Is he saying crazy things? I seriously doubt if he even knows what he's saying. That's just bullshit, it's pure nonsense. Don't you all know about the Chu clan's facade? This thing must be up to something again. It's a gimmick to attract everyone's attention so that it can dig a hole behind people's backs. I just don't know who will be the unlucky one this time. This person must be a little expert at digging holes. That was why he had such a deep understanding of Chu Yang. What's impossible? He can't do it, but what about others? After all, he still relies on women. Suddenly, the whole place fell completely silent. Chu Yang did have the possibility of slaughtering a saint. Although it was not his ability, it was not his ability. It was not his ability, but Shangguan Lan. Anyway, it was really possible for him to slaughter a saint. Everyone below the saint was an ant. Chapter 2091. The entire place instantly fell silent, oppressive and deathly silent. This was the most unforgettable for Chen Borang. He was the first victim of such a method. Sun Jiming, who was behind Chu Yang, finally understood why this thing in front of him was so hateful. He even had the urge to kill Chu Yang immediately. What kind of reaction is this? Chu Yang directly jumped up and shouted, exclamations, screams, disbelief. Have all of you been eaten by maggots? Chu Yang also felt that he should be beaten up with a rod. He wasn't as smug as him. However, he didn't care. He didn't want to torment Sky, who was currently uncomfortable. He had never been happy in the 6 academies combined tournament. His heart had always been heavy, and he had been worrying about this and that. His brain was overloaded, and it was even more tiring than cultivation. Now that he knew the mastermind, the situation was even worse. He wanted to go crazy first. I say, can you guys give some reaction? This is killing a saint, after all. It's like an ordinary person wanting to kill an emperor. You still know? Everyone was cursing in their hearts, and they were even more envious and jealous. If they had such a fiancé, they might also show off like this. Shangguan Lan rolled her eyes. Chu Yang had gone crazy again. Let's talk about the first question first. Chu Yang soon felt that it was meaningless, and if no one took it seriously, it wouldn't be fun, so he emphasized. I'm serious about killing a saint, and I'm also serious about showing off. Let's talk about the problem of living off a woman. Chu Yang stretched out 2 fingers. To forge iron, one needs to be strong, and living off a woman is a skill. Not everyone can live off a woman like me. I'll show you what I'm capable of and let you guys be shocked. Suddenly, he shouted at Liu Yunpeng, Peng Peng, go and tell our grandfather to help me kill a saint. Liu Yunpeng wanted to hit someone, but he just glared. Chu Hang, is my grandfather your servant? He really wasn't in a good mood. Chu Yang didn't even think before speaking. How could he speak carelessly about something like slaughtering a saint? He was sure that if Shangguan Lan was not here, Chu Yang would have been killed. Are you going or not? Chu Yang directly rolled up his sleeves. His eyes were even bigger than Liu Yunpeng's and even more furious than Liu Yunpeng's. I'm not going. If you have the ability, go and invite him yourself. Liu Yunpeng directly turned his head to the side. Rumble. The 5 hells mother-child heavenly demon cauldron moved in the air, as heavy as a mountain. In the blink of an eye, it formed a formation above Liu Yunpeng's head. Hee hee. Chu Yang only then smiled wickedly. He said to Liu Yunpeng, I'll treat you to a big meal, and then I'll strip you naked and hang you up to dry. Peng Peng, what do you think? You bastard. Liu Yunpeng gritted his teeth. His eyes were so angry that they could almost spit fire. Thank you for the compliment. Chu Yang enjoyed it very much. Are you going now? Yes, Liu Yunpeng finished speaking and couldn't help but roll up his sleeves. He wanted nothing more than to go up and fight Chu Hang, but he could only think about it. He gritted his teeth and said hatefully, Chu Hang, just you wait. Peng Peng, go play in the mud. Chu Yang impatiently waved his hand at Liu Yunpeng, then said to Xia Wanjin, Xia, go to the family and invite a saint to help me kill a saint. The lesson of the past was a lesson for the future. Liu Yunpeng vividly explained in front of him, so Xia Wanjin directly said, Chu Hang, I'll take my revenge from the beginning to the end. Good boy, good boy. Xia Wanjin was comforted like a child. His vision turned black, and he almost fell over. Everyone. Chu Yang became serious and said with a smile, what do you think of my moves? Only then did people realize that Chu Yang's wings were fully fledged. Chu Yang raised his head and looked at the closed spectator stands. He said playfully, the 6 of you, guess who was the first saint that I killed? What was the meaning of this? Was he threatening the leaders of the 6 academies? Chapter 2092. He was a madman. The moment Chu Yang threatened the leaders of the 6 great academies, everyone's heart was in turmoil, and they could not calm down. The 6 of you should think about it carefully. Don't say that I didn't give you a chance. The frivolous expression on Chu Yang's face disappeared, and he said to Shangguan Lan, Lan, let's go. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Chu Yang and Shangguan Lan left quickly, and the crowd was in an uproar. What is Chu Hang planning to do? Overturn the situation in the East Continent and restore the name of the Eastern Wilderness? Using a woman to act like a tyrant, how shameless is he? Are you stupid? Is there any use in criticizing him like that? That wild dog won't care about that. I regret it. I should have killed that wild dog long ago. It's too late to say anything now. Many people felt extremely remorseful. They felt that they had let Chu Yang off too much. So much so that no one could restrain him anymore. Kill Chu Hang? Someone sneered. Not many people wanted to kill Chu Hang before. It's easy for you to say that. That's right. Many people agreed. Go and kill one, and you'll know the consequences. In the end, the Eastern Wilderness is still the root of the problem. As long as the discrimination between the East Continent and the Eastern Wilderness doesn't change, Chu Hang will definitely not stop. This time, the East Continent will be in trouble. Everyone had their own opinions, and everyone had their own opinions. Sun Jiming had returned to the closed spectator stand, and he said to the leaders of the 6 great academies with a serious expression, previously, the holy disciple was killed carelessly, which was a form of connivance on Qianzi's part. Now that Chu Yang wanted to kill Gongsun Long but was stopped, he has already seen through it. Sigh. After saying that, he let out a long sigh. Do as you see fit. As soon as he finished speaking, Sun Jiming left. I'm afraid that's not all. Amidst the solemn atmosphere, the leader of the Heavenly Demon Academy broke the silence. When you stopped him, you killed him, right? Brother Guo, what do you mean? Could it be that Brother Guo also favors that wild dog? The leaders of the Sky Academy, the Sky Sword Academy, the Myriad Elephant Academy, and the Star Academy all glared coldly at the leader of the Sky Demon Academy. What is it? The leader of the Sky Demon Academy's face turned ugly. Brother Beigong, are you planning to attack me? Sigh. The Divine Firmament Academy's leader couldn't help but sigh. This is why this kid is so terrifying. He's clearly trying to split us apart. His method of beating the grass and alerting the snake is truly astonishing. The atmosphere immediately eased up. The 6 of them were well aware of this. Because of Shangguan Lan, it was impossible for the East Continent Inspector to intervene. Furthermore, when the 6 of them had tried to stop Chu Yang from killing Gongsun Long, other than the 2 leaders from the Heavenly Demon Academy and Divine Firmament Academy, the other 4 had wanted to kill him. They had used their spirit force on Chu Yang, killing him instantly. This also became an excuse for Chu Yang. Therefore, after Shangguan Lan revealed her identity, Chu Yang took advantage of this situation to make things difficult for her. In addition, if he made a move now, it would be too late for those who wanted to kill Chu Yang to intervene even if the news spread back to the central province. He was really good at scheming and unusually sharp. The question now is, can he invite Sage Peng and the Sage of the Xia family? This was the first question that the leader of the Sky Academy wanted to confirm. Even if he can't, isn't there still Lady Divine Fragrance? Shangguan Lan. Chapter 2093. We can try to negotiate with him. The Eastern Wilderness is easy to talk about. He's not a 3-year-old kid. He definitely knows that if the Eastern Wilderness wants to rise in the East Continent, they'll have to go through a storm of blood. That's why it's imperative to kill a saint. The topic became heavier. The 6 of them knew very well that it was up to Chu Yang to decide who to attack. In truth, the leaders of the Heavenly Demon Academy and the Divine Firmament Academy weren't very worried. Because of Jing Wuming, the Heavenly Demon Academy and the Divine Firmament Academy wouldn't be Chu Yang's target. However, they had to set an example, or else it would be unavoidable. Therefore, the leaders of these 2 academies were very close to the leaders of the other 4 academies. On the other hand, the 2 of them definitely didn't want the Eastern Wilderness to rise in the East Continent. Perhaps the 2 of them had said that they didn't care about the rise of the Eastern Wilderness. However, when the time came, the identity of the people of the East Continent and their preferences burst forth. His first choice is very likely to be the Gongsun family. Not necessarily. The Gongsun family has an amazing divine tool like the yin-yang 4 symbols vase. It won't be easy to take down the Gongsun family. That's right. The wild dog's first battle must be foolproof. Only then can we continue to push forward this trend. Whether the leaders of the 6 academies worked together in the end or had their own ideas and plans was unknown. In another location, halfway up a mountain in the Middle Sky mountain range, the terrain was open, the vegetation was lush, and the scenery was beautiful. It was an excellent place to set up camp. Naturally, Chu Yang had chosen this place. At the moment, there were Shangguan Lan, Shangguan Mai, Lil Guari, the parrot, the red bird, Kui Shinho's trio, and Liu Yunpeng's trio. Chu Yang's small group had all gathered here. Every one of them had already felt that when Chu Yang said that he would slaughter a saint in the martial arts arena, it was definitely not a joke. I say, Chu Hang, can we not play with our hearts beating faster? The parrot was already trembling. Whenever it thought about something as big as slaughtering a saint, it would become restless and restless. It fluttered about like an ant on a hot pan. Yeah. Lil Guari also cried out. To it, killing a saint was no different from courting death. In addition, it also didn't agree. Why must they kill? Why must they slaughter saints? Little Guari, from now on, you're not allowed to make a sound. Just watch from the side. Before Chu Yang could get angry, Shangguan Lan had already glared at him. He couldn't help but touch his neck helplessly. Xiao Guari had already become Shangguan Lan's treasure. Little bitch, if you continue behaving like that, I'll chop off your wings and barbecue them. The parrot realized that Chu Yang wasn't speaking in a frivolous manner. So, it didn't dare to talk back to him. The Eastern Wilderness. Don't you want to reconsider? Kui Shin Hu, Hao Haodong, and Oyu Luzheng's bodies were also faintly trembling. Such a thing as slaughtering a saint was really too shocking. They had never thought that there would be a day when they would need to take such a step. A saint was a saint after all. It was not something that the three of them could imagine. That's all you've got. Chu Yang immediately reprimanded them. Of course, he naturally felt pressure in his heart. The reaction of the parrot and the others deepened this kind of pressure, but he didn't waver, nor did he continue to be angry at Kui Shinhu and the others. He just said, go, invite Senior Sima Jian here. Yes, the Eastern Wilderness. The three of them also noticed that Chu Yang was determined to do it. They didn't say anything else, and the three of them left together. Contact Grandpa. I need an answer later, Chu Yang said to Liu Yunpeng as he was thinking intensely. He wasn't sure if Saint Peng would come, but how would he know if he didn't try? Are you sure you want to do this? Liu Yunpeng asked seriously in a low voice. Do you think I would joke about this kind of thing? This is imperative, Chu Yang said seriously, then continued, it's time to end everything in the East Continent. Chapter 2094. Xia Wanjin and Chu Yang looked at each other for a while. Chu Yang did not look away, so Xia Wanjin said solemnly, I need to prove that you are worthy of the family's help. Everything was about benefits, and there was no friendship. However, Chu Yang felt warmth in his heart. Xia Wanjin was sincerely helping him. For a family, the family's interests were always the most important. Xia Wanjin was only a member of the Xia family, so he could not and was not qualified to represent the family. Even if he wanted to invite a saint from the family, it would not be as easy as Chu Yang thought. Get ready to record it. Xia Wanjin was stunned for a moment, then immediately did as he was told. He took out a pearl that could record images and placed it in his palm. Phew, Chu Yang took a deep breath. Then, he exhaled a puff of white smoke. The white breath was like a sword, and it cut a towering ancient tree in half. Then, a misty turbulence surged, and waves of shocking roars came from it. In the blink of an eye, the azure dragon, white tiger, vermilion bird, black tortoise, bear, leopard, wolf, elephant, flower, bird, fish, insect, sun, moon, star, and so on. Everything was displayed. One breath to create 10,000 spirit. Chu Yang's breath seemed to become all things in the world. It was extremely shocking. Shangguan Lan's beautiful eyes lit up with surprise. She was very surprised. Chu Yang was far more outstanding than she had imagined, and he definitely had his own secrets. However, she realized that she did not know Chu Yang that well. The parrot and Xiao Guari were stunned. Is that enough? This was one of Chu Yang's gains in the realm of the gods. Yes. Xia Wanjin said after a long time. One breath to create 10,000 spirits. At Chu Yang's level, no one in Zhongzhou could do that. He dared to use his head to guarantee that. This was enough to prove Chu Yang's potential and convince his family. All he had to do was to invite a saint from his family. Such a matter was as easy as blowing off dust. How could the Xia family care about the East continent? However, with Chu Yang's potential, the Xia family would definitely invest in him. It was too easy to choose between the two. How many secrets do you have, and to what extent have you reached? Liu Yunpeng was really shocked and couldn't help but ask. How should I put it? Chu Yang had a lot of reservations, but what he said was also very true. Right now, it's very difficult for me to break through the next realm. The origin of a saint can only help me break through a few small realms at most. Hiss. At this moment, even Shangguan Lan couldn't help but take a deep breath. The origin of a saint was Chu Yang, but he was only at this level. You can directly devour the source energy of the saints. They won't affect you. This method was very fast for ordinary people, but it also had a great drawback, because it was equivalent to inheriting the martial path of a saint, and it would be very difficult to break through later. No, the sage source energy is just a source of power that pushes my martial path forward slowly. 100 grotto heavens were like a car, and the source energy of a saint was generally like gasoline. This was also one of the reasons why Chu Yang wanted to kill a saint. Liu Yunpeng and all the others were silent. When Chu Yang and Shangguan Lan left to talk about some private matters, he looked at Chu Yang's back and couldn't help but say, "He's really a monster." After hearing this, little Guari and the parrot couldn't help but nod repeatedly. After that, Liu Yunpeng looked at Xia Wanjin to find a sense of agreement. What do you think? If you can describe him as a monster, I've never seen such a monster. I've never seen such a strange thing either. The sage source energy is just the driving force for his martial path. It's hard to imagine. Xiong Wanxiang was still in a daze. He felt like he was in a dream, and everything was so unreal. Chapter 2095. Reminiscing about the past, looking forward to the future, living in the present, sweet and sweet. This was what Chu Yang and Shangguan Lan said and did when they were together. Chu Yang, of course, thoroughly understood the situation of Shangguan Lan's family. Emperor Wen's real name was Shangguan Xiong. He liked to write, paint, and write poems. He was especially fond of wine and called himself the drunkard. Shangguan Lan's father, Shangguan Yun, was different from his father. He had a headache when he saw brush, ink, paper, and inkstone, and wanted to make poems, calligraphy, and paintings. However, he was especially fond of wine and martial arts. His mother was Huangfu Chenying. She was virtuous and gentle, proficient in music, chess, calligraphy, and painting. She was the person who made Chu Yang feel the most pressure. For every son-in-law, the mother-in-law was definitely 3 mountains on the son-in-law. Moreover, Chu Yang was a rough person. Although he had some poems from his previous life in his mind, he felt even more pressure in the face of an exquisite mother-in-law. As for Emperor Wen and his future father-in-law, they both liked wine, so the direction of their attack was completely clear. At worst, Chu Yang could brew some good wine to suit their tastes. At least, he felt that it would be much easier to deal with these two people. Of course, he knew many of his potential love rivals. When he heard that one of them, whose surname was Kong, gave Shangguan Lan a lot of pressure, he was unhappy. He immediately made a couplet and asked Shangguan Lan to find a way to silently pass it to that thing. The couplet Shangguan Lan received was generally as follows: there were 3 teachers in 1 village and 2 miles. They didn't know the 4 books, 5 classics, and 6 meanings, but dared to teach 7, 8, and 9 sons, very bold. In the picture, the dragon didn't roar, the tiger didn't roar, the little wild dog was laughable, orioles and swallows, green and red, harmonious everywhere. My superior prestige, I show the courage of a tiger. You plant a tree horizontally. If it was someone with the same background as Chu Yang, they would be very familiar with these couplets. They would know that someone was probably trying to realize a classic movie scene in Tianhun World. Although Shangguan Lan didn't know these, she knew that Chu Yang was already digging a hole. She couldn't help but roll her eyes. She secretly thought in her heart. He hadn't even gone to Zhengzhou, and he had already dug a hole in advance. How far-sighted. She didn't know about Chu Yang's bad taste, but it was very difficult. After all, she needed the other party to cooperate. But how would she know if she didn't try? Chu Yang immediately got down to business. Lan Lan, I need to know exactly when the saints sent by those bastards from the Central Plains will arrive. Can you help me with this? As he spoke, he bowed to Shangguan Lan and said with a smile, Husband, I thank Madam first. Shangguan Lan blushed and immediately changed the topic. Brother Yang, are you worried that the saints of the Central Region will interfere with the Central Region and disrupt your plan? Chu Yang smiled. You can say that, but not necessarily. Shangguan Lan did not continue to ask. After Chu Yang secretly took a bite of her and waited for her to calm down, he said to a hidden corner in the distance, Can you have some morals? Do you know what it means to be alone? Do you know what it means to be a third wheel in the distance? You are a third wheel in the distance. Immediately, Shangguan Lan showed a surprised expression. She had just been sweet with Chu Yang, and her mind was completely focused on Chu Yang. She didn't notice that someone was nearby, and someone was actually monitoring them. This was really bad. Although she didn't know what a third wheel was, she clearly understood what it meant to be alone. Not to mention Chu Yang, she was naturally extremely unhappy. And when the husband and wife were intimate, there was someone secretly watching them, which really made her mood extremely bad. In particular, when she thought that the person in the dark was likely to be an admirer of hers in Zhongzhou, and was sent to monitor her, the killing intent in her heart suddenly blazed. Chapter 2096. Lan Lan, don't be angry. Chu Yang sensed Shangguan Lan's killing intent and understood. He smiled. This is a dead person, Nangong Xing from the Stardo Academy. Nangong Xing. Shangguan Lan couldn't help but open her mouth wide. How could she not know the name Nangong Xing? In the end, all the blame for the holy disciple's death in the Six Academies Alliance tournament was put on Nangong Xing, and it was rumored that Nangong Xing had died long ago. However, this dead person had appeared at this moment. When Shangguan Lan heard the person in the dark admit that he was Nangong Xing, she couldn't help but look at Chu Yang. She was even more surprised. Her big brother Yang wasn't simple. He seemed to be more powerful than she had imagined. Chu Yang was extremely satisfied when he saw Shangguan Lan's expression of admiration. I'm Nangong Xing, but I'm definitely not a dead person. Nangong Xing smiled bitterly. He had actually been framed by Chu Yang like this. He had even become an unpardonable sinner. Earlier, he had clearly sensed Shangguan Lan's killing intent. It wasn't a joke. After all, she was the divine fragrance lady of the Central Continent. Even Qian Zi and the East Continent Patrol Inspector had to respect her. Lan Lan, just do your best to do what I told you earlier. Chu Yang continued, also, I'm going to tell a dead person about some schemes. It's not good for you to be brought out by me. You shouldn't dirty your ears. Go back and help me take care of my little Guari. Okay. Shangguan Lan nodded and left. Nangong Xing agreed with this. It was best if women didn't know about how sinister men were. He also believed that Chu Yang definitely had some sinister ideas. He liked this rotten idea very much. However, his first sentence had nothing to do with this rotten idea. Do you really want to kill a saint? His tone couldn't help but become serious. To be honest, he was quite shocked by Chu Yang's bomb. Even now, he still couldn't believe it. What do you think? Chu Yang said with a smile. In an instant, Nangong Xing hated the words what do you think? If Feng Polong was here, he would definitely feel the same way. Is it that hard to give a definite answer? He couldn't help but glare. Chu Yang was really too good at making people unhappy. If you ride a tiger, it's impossible to get off. We must do it. Chu Yang smiled and said, right now, we're just deciding who to target. Nangong Xing looked at Chu Yang in a daze. After a while, he sighed and said, Chu Yang is indeed bold Chu. You really live up to your reputation. Chu Yang cupped his fists and said, you flatter me, you flatter me. Brother, you should praise me even more. I'm more comforted. Nangong Xing couldn't help but laugh. Then, he asked in a deep voice, who do you plan to attack? Right now, it's the Gongsun clan. If I say that I'm going to kill Gongsun Long, I'm going to kill him. He can't escape. Nangong Xing was shocked. He shouted, Gongsun family? You should know that the Gongsun family has the top-grade divine artifact, the yin-yang 4 symbols vase. Moreover, the Gongsun family has at least 3 saints. Not to mention the saints, the yin-yang 4 symbols vase was too difficult to deal with. Therefore, he didn't think that it was a wise choice. Chu Yang didn't care. Your reaction makes me even more certain. Although the Gongsun family isn't as famous as the 6 great academies in the East Continent, it's the most powerful one. It's also the toughest bone in the East Continent. If we don't attack it, who else can we attack? Chu Yang had some doubts about this before, but now he didn't. The 6 great academies worked together and had always controlled the East Continent. Therefore, they were naturally more famous. However, in terms of individual strength, the Gongsun family was still the most powerful one. Chapter 2097. Are you sure you want to choose the Gongsun family as your first target? Nangong Xing was still confused. Why not? Chu Yang laughed. The Gongsun family is the toughest one. What will the 6 great academies and the other forces in the East Continent think after I bite off this bone? If I kill a few more of them, won't it be easier later on? It was difficult at first to intimidate the other forces in the East Continent and force them to submit, but once he succeeded, it would be much easier later on. In addition, if Chu Yang were to target the weaker forces, even if he were to succeed, it would not be enough of a deterrent to the other forces in the East Continent. This would cause them to hold on to a fluke mentality, and they would definitely do their best to resist. This was really troublesome. Nangong Xing agreed with Chu Yang's choice. He knew that, but he didn't think of it in a short time. However, that's not necessarily the case. Suddenly, Chu Yang said, the Gongsun clan might not be my first choice. Nangong Xing didn't ask further. No plan could remain unchanged. He had to adjust according to the changes in the situation. What can I do? Do what you can. Nangong Xing thought for a while and understood what Chu Yang meant. You don't want me to get involved. Why do you want to get involved? Chu Yang said, I've attracted all the attention. You can do something secretly, right? After a pause, he said with a sinister smile, you were set up. Of course, you have to get back at them. Otherwise, you won't be happy. Haha. Nangong Xing couldn't help but laugh. He liked Chu Yang's tone and way of doing things. At least, he felt relieved when he heard it. Then he couldn't help but laugh. So, I'd better not have any contact with you. I don't even know you. You do your thing, and I'll do mine. At the same time, there are several undercurrents surging. They will definitely have an even greater headache, and will definitely be able to taste the feeling of racking their brains to figure out who their hidden enemy is. You are so smart. Chu Yang immediately changed his words. No, you are so insidious. Haha. Nangong Xing laughed out loud once again. Who was the one who was being treacherous? But you have to be careful. Chu Yang warned, the other party is not an idiot, so there is a high possibility that he will become a dead man in the next moment. TSK. Nangong Xing was extremely disdainful. He was not afraid of danger, but he was afraid that he would not have the opportunity to take revenge. To him, Chu Yang's method of revenge was almost perfect. Also, there is one more thing that I need you to do. Chu Yang continued, send a message to the 6 great academies anonymously. Tell them that Qian Zi has allied with the Myriad Demon sect and invited strong reinforcements from the central continent. They want to suppress and unify the East Continent. As for the details, I'll leave it to you. After hearing this, Nangong Xing's eyes lit up. The 6 great academies should have been worried about Qian Zi. Whether this news was true or not, it would increase the 6 great academies' suspicion and reduce the pressure on Chu Yang. It was a good move to divert trouble. He felt that Chu Yang's plan was not simple. He had a feeling that Chu Yang was playing a very big game of chess. Once he succeeded, the world would be turned upside down, and he would be frightened. The basis of his judgment was very simple. Although Nangong Xing was working in the dark, the things he was doing were definitely dangerous. Because the people he was plotting against were at the level of saints. They could easily be caught and killed. Therefore, He concluded that the things Chu Yang wanted to do were definitely 100 times more dangerous than this. I'll wait for your good news. Your life is the most important. Be careful. Don't be the only one celebrating after you kill Qianzi. Chapter 2098. In the Seven Wheels Devil Domain, devil energy roiled, and darkness enveloped it. Dong. Dong. After speaking with Nangong Xing, Chu Yang hurried to the Seven Wheels Devil Domain and took out the Devil Goblet. The demonic bell was his true trump card for this operation. Although the demonic bell was severely damaged, it was still an emperor weapon. Although it was severely damaged, it contained the Tao of two great emperors, allowing it to be reborn. Even though the Devil Goblet had yet to fully recover, it was still under the control of the Ice Kuan. How could a sage possibly stand up to it? By this point, Chu Yang had already absorbed the nine-headed Heaven Devourer serpent into the Devil Goblet. The huge millstone and the countless living beings inside were devoured by the Devil Goblet, and Tao runes began to spread out along with the tolling of the bell. As the demonic bell refined the millstone and the corpses began to reveal their true appearance. Dazzling words jumped out and landed on a Tao diagram. In the end, they turned into supreme scriptures and completely entered the bell. At the same time, a projection of a Grand Emperor appeared, and the nine-headed Heaven Devourer serpent appeared next to it. Grand Emperor Heaven Devourer. There's no doubt about it. Chu Yang looked at the projection of the Grand Emperor and the nine-headed Heaven Devourer serpent, and couldn't be more certain that Gong Sunlong was a descendant of Grand Emperor Heaven Devourer. As for the scripture, it was the scripture of the heaven-devouring Great Emperor. It contained the Tao of the heaven-devouring Great Emperor. However, with Chu Yang's current cultivation level, he was unable to comprehend it. My guess was correct. Gong Sunlong didn't comprehend the millstone, the Ice Kuan said. The Gong Sun clan must have something left behind by Grand Emperor Heaven Devourer. Because Gong Sunlong has the nine-headed Heaven Devourer serpent martial soul, he must have triggered the sovereign possession. That's why the sovereign possession sent the scripture into his martial soul. Once Gong Sunlong reaches a certain level, he'll be able to uncover the secrets of his martial soul and obtain the legacy. If he can't meet the requirements, he'll be discarded. That's what Grand Emperors do. Emperor's possession? Chu Yang's heart skipped a beat. Kunken, you're saying that the Gongsun clan might have a monarch weapon? No. Bing Kuan said with certainty, it's just that the Gongsun family doesn't even know if they have an emperor's possession. If they respect their ancestors and worship the emperor's possession, then they can obtain the inheritance. How can unfilial descendants obtain it? Also, if the Gongsun clan had an emperor weapon, Gong Sunlong would have known that he was the descendant of the sky-devouring Great Emperor. When he was forced into a corner during the battle with Master, he would have used the secret technique of the sky-devouring Great Emperor. This explanation was acceptable. Chu Yang felt slightly more at ease and continued to comprehend everything. His plan was simple. He wanted to use the demonic bell as a heavenly abode and place it within the 100 heavenly abodes. When the demonic bell devoured the sage's origin, it used the demonic bell as a base to push the 100 heavenly abodes forward. Chu Yang intended to use the demonic clock as an engine, but it was different from an engine. When it devoured the origin of the saints, it should be able to restore itself slightly. Dang! 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 On this day, a huge bell rang in the East Continent. Everyone could see a huge bell in the direction of the Seven Wheels demonic realm. It seemed to be as tall as the heavens and the earth. It devoured the entire Seven Wheels demonic realm and absorbed it into the bell. Then, it shrank and disappeared. On this day, the East Continent trembled endlessly. The appearance of the demonic clock made the East Continent even more turbulent. The 6 great academies were even more restless. The reason for this was very simple. Eastern Wilderness 002 had once controlled the demonic clock in the Seven Wheels demonic realm. Therefore, the demonic clock must have something to do with it. How could the 6 great academies not be alarmed when the demonic clock showed signs of awakening? Chu Yang was Eastern Wilderness 002. There was no need for them to verify this. It was a matter of fact. Chapter 2099. This was the place where Chu Yang had discussed the Tao with Sage Peng. The three of them had already met, and Chu Yang had also arrived. Before this, Chu Yang had already received news from Shangguanlan that the three sages of the Kong family, as well as the Middle Continent sages who had achieved sainthood through the Tao of the Saber and the Tao of the Sword, would soon arrive at the East Continent. The goal of these 5 sages was very simple: to eliminate Chu Yang. Other than these 5 sages, there were 8 other sages behind them. However, these 5 sages had arrived in a hurry. A total of 13 sages. They really think highly of me, Chu Yang sneered in front of Sima Jian, Sage Peng, and the Xia family's sage, Xia Jie. After that, he began to meet the 3 of them. Of course, Sima Jian would do his best to help Chu Yang. Sage Peng and Chu Yang agreed very much. Of course, Chu Yang had no objections. However, the Xia family's sage, Xia Jie, was completely different. Xia Jie naturally wanted to see how strong Chu Yang was. He wanted to see if he was as amazing as Xia Wanjin had said. Chu Yang naturally knew that he had to pass this hurdle. Sima Jian and Sage Peng understood. They watched the confrontation between Chu Yang and Xia Jie with interest. Xia Jie was a tall and sturdy man. Although he was old, his body shape hadn't changed much. He was dressed like a woodcutter. At first glance, he looked like an ordinary old man. No one could tell that he was a saint. Moreover, he was a peak-level saint. According to what Chu Yang had learned from Xia Wanjin, the Xia family's sage was not part of the Xia family. It could be said that whatever he wanted to do, the Xia family would be completely uninvolved. Naturally, this was the Xia family's arrangement. This time, sending such a sage would not affect the Xia family at all. They could do whatever they wanted. This was the best thing for Chu Yang. Boom, boom, boom. Xia Jie clasped his hands behind his back and narrowed his eyes as he walked step by step towards Chu Yang. Every step he took caused the ground to tremble violently. An enormous pressure descended like a mountain, and in an instant, Chu Yang's body blossomed with dazzling rainbow lights, making him look like a sparkling diamond. The dazzling neon lights were extremely beautiful. At this moment, it was as if the noisy guests had entered the ballroom. The sky darkened, but the neon lights shone brightly. Chu Yang's body was trembling, but there was no sound coming from his bones. This was a probing pressure, not a punitive pressure. Compared to Qianzi's pressure, it was much weaker. In other words, Xia Jie was afraid that he would accidentally kill Chu Yang. When Chu Yang thought of this, he couldn't help but laugh. This was really possible. However, the pressure disappeared in an instant. Xia Jie put his hands behind his back and walked around Chu Yang. He observed him for a while before saying, "You have a good physique." It ended just like that. Chu Yang was a little surprised. It was naturally not bad that his body had become a god. However, he still couldn't help but say, "I thought it would be fun." It ended just like that. Old Master Xia, I was caught off guard. Sima Jian and Sage Peng were naturally not satisfied with this kind of excitement. The physique carries the Tao. Why did you ask me to speak? Xia Jie was a little unhappy and directly scolded. Then, he sighed and said, "The younger generation really surpasses us in time. I'm old, I'm useless. Then why don't you go into a coffin and be buried in the ground?" Chu Yang blew the hair on his forehead and said narcissistically, "I made you feel inferior." Xia Jie glared at him, but Chu Yang was not afraid at all. He looked back at him. After a while, Xia Jie laughed, "Haha, this kid is crazy." Chapter 2100. Since you don't think the sage's aura and sage deterrence are interesting, why don't you do something more interesting? Xia Jie suddenly said. Why should I continue? Chu Yang shrugged. Haven't I already met the criteria? If you can come up with something more interesting, you might be able to invite a few more people. Xia Jie laughed. Let's see if you have the ability. TCH, it's just a few sages. What can they do? Chu Yang said disdainfully. I'm sorry, old Master Xia, but I'm not interested. Interesting. Chu Yang actually thought a few sages was too little. Xia Jie immediately said, If you can come up with something interesting, how about 10 sages? 10 sages. Kui Shinhu and the others were so shocked that their parrot stuck out its tongue. If 10 more sages came, they would be able to suppress the eastern continent. That's still too little. Chu Yang shook his head and said, Old Master Xia, you're just a cover. 10 more won't do you any good. They'll just watch from the sidelines. Chu Yang really dared to talk nonsense. The sages were just a cover. 10 more wouldn't be enough. His tone was so big that it could scare people to death. You're even crazier than I thought. I'm Chu Yang, the laughing emperor. Chu Yang admitted. My craziness is unparalleled, and I've never denied it. That's enough with your mouth. Wouldn't it be boring if the bar was filled with arrogance? Xia Jie said. Even if you're crazy, you still have the ability to be crazy. Let's invite old Master Xia to watch. With a clang, Chu Yang unsheathed his sword of contradiction. Sharp sword chi swept out. Xia Jie, Sage Rock, and Sima Jian immediately looked at Chu Yang. They wanted to see how strong he was. How dare he mock an emperor? With a whoosh, Chu Yang stabbed out with his sword, drawing a horizontal line in the air. Chu Yang had comprehended this move when he fought with Xiao Qiuyu in the God's World. It was just a horizontal line, but the void was cut open like a piece of paper, and the entire world seemed to be cut in half. However, that was not all. Xia Jie and the other 2 saints found that the horizontal line extended endlessly to both sides, and there seemed to be stars and worlds hanging on the corresponding scales. The stars or worlds on both sides were like yin and yang, like the sun and the moon. They corresponded with each other, forming a perfect balance. Soon after, the 3 of them saw that Chu Yang was about to raise the sword in his hand. They found that he was using a lot of effort. His entire body was trembling, and his forehead was already sweating. He barely managed to raise the sword. When the sword fell, it drew a vertical line and intertwined with the horizontal line. Wang. The vertical line and the horizontal line intertwined to form a cross, then began to rotate, forming a world. However, Xia Jie, Sage Rock, and Sage Rock could already see a 3rd line, a 4th line, a 3-dimensional world, a 4-dimensional world. Although these lines used the simplest method to outline one spacetime dimension after another, they were endless and very profound. Even the 3 of them were unable to deduce infinitely. For a moment, they were stunned, not moving for a long time, not speaking for a long time. After a long time, Xia Jie sighed and said, There's a limit to a person's strength, but there's no limit to the Tao. Boy, you're even more arrogant than I thought. Thank you for the compliment. But that's the truth. I won't be modest. Chu Yang smiled. He didn't take those 10 saints seriously. He just wanted Xia Jie to acknowledge him, that's all. Chapter 2101. Chu Yang laughed out loud. My grandfather is indeed my grandfather. He really knows how invincible I am. Be serious. Sima Jian scolded Chu Yang. What are you going to do now? Xia Jie laughed at the mention of this. He really wanted to see Chu Yang's headache, so he said, As far as I know, many people have already come to join in the fun. I'm afraid it won't be easy for you to carry out your plan. Hee hee. Chu Yang laughed sinisterly. I said that I would make a move against the Great Six. Haven't you heard of luring the snake out of its hole and then killing it? At this moment, Chu Yang finally revealed the true purpose in his heart. Liu Yunpeng and the others were dumbfounded. Their entire bodies were almost scared silly. Sima Jian and Sage Peng were also shocked. Chu Yang was so bold and daring to take the initiative to hunt down the saints of the Central Plains. Xia Jie's smile froze on his face. Not only was he surprised, but he was also shocked. Who would have thought that Chu Yang's goal was not the East Continent, but the Central Plains? The matter of the East Continent had yet to be settled, but he had already set his sights on the Central Plains. This was definitely not something an ordinary person could do. They would not even dare to think about it, because the people of the East Continent would definitely be in awe of the Central Plains. However, this little guy called Chu Yang in front of him did not have the slightest bit of respect. He would directly kill anyone who was hostile to him in the Central Plains. Saying that this kid is extremely daring is not enough to describe him. I'm afraid that he wouldn't even be afraid of a great emperor. If he grows up, our Shia clan's investment will be a huge profit. Our clan will definitely rise again. Shia Jie's eyes flickered. Setting up an ambush halfway is very imaginative. But what if we hurt the Central Plains? Isn't that good? Chu Yang's eyes flashed coldly. I'll kill one if one comes, two if two come. I'll kill as many as come. I'll kill until they don't dare to come. Aren't you thinking too highly of us? Xia Jie smiled bitterly. Saints are being killed again and again. I'm afraid earthly sovereigns and even great emperors will be alarmed. If they can be alarmed by such a small matter, then those so-called earthly sovereigns or great emperors are nothing but trash. Can't I just hide from them? Chu Yang's disdain left Xia Jie, Sage Peng, and Sima Jian speechless. However, they had to admit that earthly sovereigns, especially great emperors, had been alarmed over such a trivial matter. Are you treating us like coolies? We'll have no money, no food, and great danger. Xia Jie could only smile bitterly again. The Xia family's investment was definitely not easy. No, no, no. Chu Yang immediately shook his finger. I said, you are just a cover. After all, this marshal will feel uneasy if my uncle and the two old men do all the hard work. This marshal has always respected the old men because burying you is really too troublesome. From the beginning until now, Chu Yang had been very unruly. Oh, then I'd like to see how you're going to kill a saint. Xia Jie was really unhappy. This little guy was using him as a cover. The three of you, please prepare your titanium alloy dog eyes. This marshal is going to use his ultimate move. Chu Yang shouted, now, let's welcome Kuan Kuan. A devil light flew out from Chu Yang's lower abdomen with a swoosh. Immediately, the devil energy in the world surged and dyed the entire space black. The surroundings were pitch black like ink, and endless devil energy was surging. Chapter 2102. Demonic chi surged and filled the entire area. In the depths of the demonic chi, a figure stepped out as if he had walked out of a black hole. Outer Heaven Demon, Sima Jian, Saint Peng, and Xia Jie couldn't help but exclaim in shock. This demonic chi wasn't the demonic chi of the demonic race or demonic path, but the demonic chi of the outer heaven, a sign of the invasion of the myriad gods' world. Although this demonic chi seemed evil and cold, it wasn't so. The three of them could clearly see through it. They never thought that Chu Yang would actually use such a big move. He was actually colluding with the myriad gods' world. Colluding with the myriad gods' world and betraying the heavenly soul world was a great crime. Not to mention others, even the three of them couldn't tolerate Chu Yang. However, this was just a momentary thought. They hadn't confirmed the details yet, so they didn't immediately attack Chu Yang. Bing Kuan appeared in front of the three of them. He cupped his fists and said, greetings, fellow Taoist. Wang. Suddenly, the atmosphere shook violently. Saint Peng's eyes shot out like two sharp swords and landed on Bing Kuan. His eyes were filled with murderous intent. Bing Kuan smiled bitterly. He naturally knew Saint Peng, and he also knew the Peng beheading Dao art. Saint Peng wanted to behead Kuan Peng, the righteous path. It could be said that Saint Peng was his mortal enemy. He naturally didn't fear Saint Peng, but he couldn't ignore his master. Master, is this how you want me to appear? The three of them were shocked. This Kuan Peng of the myriad gods world was actually Chu Yang's servant. It was simply unbelievable. After all, Bing Kuan was a saint. How could a saint be a servant? Who would have such ability? If it were them, they would rather die than become someone's servant, but such a thing happened. However, this was just a momentary confusion. Others couldn't understand, but this didn't include Chu Yang. Chu Yang was an exception. Moreover, Bing Kuan called himself a servant, but that was just a title. Chu Yang wasn't a fool. How could Saint Peng look down on him? From their point of view, the Ice Kuan should be Chu Yang's elder, and this was not surprising. Saint Peng's killing intent instantly vanished. The Ice Kuan wasn't his target. After all, the Ice Kuan didn't belong to the heavenly spirit world. It belonged to the gods' world. Kuan Kuan, isn't this settled? Chu Yang said to the Ice Kuan as he spread out his hands. Master is mighty. Haha, mighty Kuan Kuan, Chu Yang laughed. Then, the Ice Kraken disappeared into Chu Yang's paradise again. At this time, Sacred Rock and the other two couldn't sense it even if they wanted to. Their hearts trembled violently. How could Sage Peng and Xia Jie know that Chu Yang had the martial Dao systems of two different worlds? Although Sima Jian knew about it, he did not know about Chu Yang's 100 paradise. This kid is really amazing, and his secrets are definitely not small. Xia Jie realized that Chu Yang had a great secret. As for what would happen to Chu Yang in the future, he couldn't imagine it. Then, he returned to the topic at hand. Do you know what the consequences will be if they find out that you have the aura or mark of the God Realm on you? They will think that someone from the God Realm is involved in this. What will happen? Chu Yang sneered. He didn't take it to heart. You're from the Eastern Wilderness? That's right. The Eastern Wilderness is dissatisfied with the Eastern continent, so they colluded with the God's world. Of course, Chu Yang laughed. Then, the God Emperor of the Central Continent will treat this as a serious matter. If he pursues the matter, not only will I die, old man Xia. Is that what you're saying? Is it impossible? Xia Jie furrowed his brows as a worried look appeared on his face. Chapter 2103. Start a rebellion. The three of them were scared out of their wits. Chu Yang is really lawless. Do you know what you're saying? Xia Jie's voice suddenly turned cold. Chu Yang knew what he meant. Wasn't it just a rebellion? What was wrong with that? As for the God Emperor of the Central Plains, he didn't respect him in the slightest. In his opinion, Xia Jie was the God Emperor, but he didn't do what he was supposed to do. Did he have a problem with that? If you have a problem with that, then let's fight. He said calmly, of course I know what I'm talking about. Just because the Eastern Wilderness is being discriminated against by the East Continent, you're going to do this? Xia Jie's tone became even harsher. If Chu Yang wanted to collude with the God Realm and lead them into the Heavenly Soul Realm, he would kill Chu Yang first. Isn't that enough? Chu Yang wasn't afraid at all. He looked straight at Xia Jie and sneered, when your clansmen were treated like dogs and locked in a dog cage, when your clansmen were treated like dogs and casually slaughtered, wantonly humiliated, killed, and suffered endless suffering, what did you think at that time? What did you do at that time? Can you still be like you are now? Talking like you don't hurt yourself? Impudent! Xia Jie roared. Even so, you can't do such a disgraceful thing. The atmosphere suddenly became tense. The parrot, Lil Guari, and Kui Xinhu, especially Xia Wanjin, were all tensed up. It was possible that the world would be turned upside down, and they would have to face each other in life and death. Xia Wanjin definitely didn't want to see such an outcome. This Xia Jie isn't me after all. It seems like I have to do something about him. Otherwise, he'll become arrogant and self-righteous. Disgraceful. Hee. Even though he knew that Xia Jie was right, he still ridiculed him in a very excessive manner. You're truly a loyal and patriotic man. Even if the emperor doesn't serve his people, you still serve him as the emperor. This young man admires you very much. Xia Jie's expression was very cold. However, he sneered, my country is not the heavenly spirit world, my home is not the heavenly spirit world, my country, my home is the East Baron, the heavenly spirit world has nothing to do with me. Chu Yang could sense Xia Jie's intense killing intent, and he said coldly, you better show some respect and retract your killing intent. Otherwise, I don't mind killing you first. Trust me, it won't be hard for me to do that. Wang. Sima Jian's mind buzzed. He never thought that Chu Yang would be so extreme and so violent. He actually said such words. Xia Wanjin was completely frozen in place, his heart filled with fear. The Xia family elder was too impudent. He didn't even think about who Chu Yang was. Why did he have to criticize him for no reason? Fortunately, Xia Jie didn't flare up, and everyone heaved a long sigh of relief. Xia Jie also retracted his killing intent and adjusted his position. Chu Yang was able to make a saint acknowledge him as his master, so he had the qualifications to be on equal footing with him. He was too impudent just now. What will you do if you're labeled as a traitor of the heavenly spirit world? Chu Yang sneered again. Do you think I can't stay in the god world anymore? What about the eastern wilderness? This question hit Chu Yang's soft spot. He couldn't help but say coldly, therefore, if the eastern wasteland is in trouble, I will pay it back 1,000 times, 10,000 times. What about Shangguanlan? Chu Yang's eyes narrowed. Isn't that the same? I don't think Duke Ju will like someone like you, Xie Jie said confidently. Chapter 2104. Xie Jie was speechless. You're not even a saint, so who would respect you? But this kind of arrogance would lead to unimaginable consequences. You're not a saint. You're much scarier than a normal saint. You'll be unfathomable in the future. That's why he was speechless. Although Chu Yang was angry, he had always been very clear. He had never acted willfully from the beginning to the end. His goal was very clear. He never planned to become a traitor of the heavenly soul world. The reason why he did this was because Xie Jie's killing intent had completely enraged him. Secondly, he felt that he needed to teach Xie Jie a lesson. He didn't want Xie Jie to act recklessly at a critical juncture and ruin his plan. This wasn't a good method, but it achieved his goal. Xie Jie did warn him of this possibility. Even though the possibility was low, he had to be careful. He couldn't bear the consequences, be it the eastern wilderness or Shangguanlan. His family was in the eastern wilderness, and Shangguanlan was his fiancée. Duke Ju is useless. Xie Jie thought for a moment and shook his head. He felt Chu Yang's arrogance very clearly. I can guarantee that you're the first person to say this. Chu Yang's face twitched. If Duke Ju knew about this, he wouldn't be able to become Xie Jie's grandson-in-law anymore. But since he had already said it, how could he give up halfway and let Xie Jie regain his senses? Don't use Duke Ju's name to threaten me. Incompetence is incompetence. Even though I'm his future grandson-in-law, I can't erase this fact. Xie Jie had just suppressed his anger, but he couldn't help but rush forward again. So you're saying that the God Emperor is also useless? He's not just useless, he's a piece of trash. Chu Yang said disdainfully, if you don't have a diamond, don't take on a porcelain job. If he doesn't even understand this principle, how capable do you think he is? The God Emperor is useless. In the entire heavenly soul world, perhaps only Chu Yang dared to say such a thing. At the very least, this was the first time anyone present had heard such a thing. Sima Jian and Peng Sheng felt a bit of a toothache. They had deeply experienced Chu Yang's lawlessness. If they were like this, there was no need to talk about the others. Xie Jie's face also stiffened. He really couldn't do anything to Chu Yang. It couldn't be said that he was fearless because he didn't know, because this little bastard really was capable. In his anger, he said in a muffled voice, there's no need for him to do anything. I'll kill the central state saint. This he was naturally the Ice Kuan. When Chu Yang heard that, he smiled in his heart. This old guy is really worried about the divine dynasty of Zhongju. He didn't reply immediately. He closed his eyes in contemplation and communicated with the Ice Kuan. In the end, he said, there's no need. No one can detect it unless the divine emperor himself is here. Swallowing the heavens. Xie Jie was shocked again. The reason why Chu Yang was doing this was because he needed the saint's source energy. Another reason was that he had the Destiny Twins' martial spirits. Ordinary people couldn't divine him at all. He had already proven this in the heavenly soul world. Among his 100 heavenly abodes, there was a huge cauldron in that strange huge world. According to Ice Kuan's calculation, even an ordinary great emperor wouldn't be able to calculate Chu Yang's location, let alone earthly sovereigns. Grandpa, uncle. Chu Yang directly started to move. After speaking to Sima Jian and Peng Xing, he said to Xie Jie, Senior Xie, please go to the Gongsun family and tell everyone that I'm going to attack the Gongsun family. Xie Jie could only leave with Peng Sheng and Sima Jian. Chapter 2105. Sima Jian, Sage Rock, and Xie Jie surrounded the Gongsun clan. The three sages of the Gongsun clan fought against the three of them. The battle between the sages was so intense that the Gongsun clan was forced to use their top-grade sacred weapon, the yin-yang four-aspect vase. However, they could not do anything to the three sages. The three sages retreated and ended their probing attack. The Gongsun clan was worried. The series of events ended in an hour. After that, such a huge incident swept across the entire eastern continent. The Great Six Schools were shocked, and the Thousand Demon sect, as well as the major forces and sects of the eastern continent, were in an uproar. Chu Yang in the eastern wilderness said that he was going to kill a sage. Such arrogant words seemed to be coming true bit by bit. The major forces of the eastern continent were in a panic. The Gongsun clan seemed to be Chu Kuangren's first target, but no one dared to be sure. Chu Kuangren's outrageous style was obvious from his words and actions. Therefore, this could also be a diversion. Once he changed his target, no one would know who would be the one to suffer. The most important reason was that Chu Kuangren had not appeared yet. Sima Jian, Sage Rock, and Xia Jie, these three sages' lineup was too shocking. Sage Rock and Xia Jie were Middle Continent's top-grade sages, so their strength was obviously much higher. Sima Jian, who seemed to be the weakest, had shocking sword techniques. He could actually block the Gongsun clan's top-grade sacred weapon, the yin-yang four-aspect vase, all by himself. On that day, Sima Jian laughed loudly and announced that the Eastern Wilderness's era had come. The Eastern Continent's discrimination, humiliation, and slaughter in the Eastern Wilderness would be put to an end, and their crimes would be punished. The Eastern Continent's earthquake caused great turmoil. The people of the Eastern Wilderness, who had been enslaved for a long time, suddenly erupted and swept across the entire Eastern Continent. Winds and clouds rose, the flames of war ignited, and the Eastern Continent was in chaos. War raged on, blood flowed like rivers, and flames of war were everywhere. Roars, killings, retribution, cries, and so on filled the entire Eastern Continent. Amidst the flames of war, the East Continent discovered that after the people of the Eastern Wilderness had endured to the extreme, such a huge eruption was truly astonishing. Moreover, after the major powers of the East Continent did not dare to appear to suppress and slaughter the people of the Eastern Wilderness, the momentum of the Eastern Wilderness became even more unstoppable. The Eastern Wilderness Village also erupted into action. As the most powerful force in the Eastern Wilderness of the Eastern Continent, they wantonly attacked and gathered many people from the Eastern Wilderness to form a surging flood and attack the Eastern Continent. The desolate emperor had risen, the three sages had appeared, and the Eastern Wilderness had awakened. No one would have thought that Chu Yang's act of slaughtering a saint would trigger such a violent reaction from the Eastern Wilderness, shocking the minds of many people. This made many people realize how much pressure the Eastern Continent had placed on the Eastern Wilderness, and how much hatred the people of the Eastern Wilderness had accumulated. Only a small spark could cause such a huge explosion, forming a sky-burning inferno that burned everything. The desolate emperor was naturally Chu Yang. In the eyes of the people of the Eastern Wilderness, Chu Yang was their emperor, the most supreme existence, and the leader of the Eastern Wilderness. The three sages were Sima Jian, Peng Sheng, and Xia Jie. Their names were also shouted by the people of the Eastern Wilderness. When Xia Jie saw the surging spirit force from all over the Eastern Continent, to the point where he almost couldn't suppress it and was about to break through to the earthly emperor realm, he couldn't help but sigh deeply. He completely understood Chu Yang's anger and felt it very deeply. What kind of resentment, what kind of hatred, and what kind of humiliation were they to be able to receive so much gratitude and form so much spirit force with his insignificant help? It was no wonder that Chu Yang was so angry, directly reprimanding Emperor Wen and the Divine Emperor for being useless. Xia Jie was ashamed to receive so much spirit force. Spirit force was extremely important to sages, because a person's spirit force was ultimately limited. However, this had its pros and cons. Chapter 2106. Sima Jian and Sage Rock naturally also received the surging spirit energy from the people from the Eastern Wasteland. The chaos in the Eastern Continent was getting more and more intense. The Eastern Continent's patrolling inspector was the one who was the most terrified, but there was nothing he could do. He could only write a letter to the divine dynasty, informing them of what had happened in the eastern continent. However, he didn't know if anyone had seen his letter. After all, no one cared about the eastern continent, let alone the eastern wilderness. Central continent, Duke Ju's residence. My father is useless, my father is useless, haha. A coarse man was laughing loudly. This feels great, my father is finally being scolded by someone, and it's my son-in-law. I should drink to my heart's content, haha. A gentle woman immediately gave him a knock on the head, then glared at him. The coarse man immediately stopped. He rubbed his head and said, "Our son-in-law is speaking the truth. Our father is useless, so I have to make a ruckus for him to hear. Otherwise, he'll lecture me all day long. What's the use of reading so many books? What's the use of reading so many books? What about serving the country and the people? In the end, our father is still a useless ah." The coarse man's words were the main point, but before he could continue, his coarse voice turned into a miserable shriek, and his ears were almost torn off. This unfilial son. In the study, an elegant old man heard the words outside and was instantly enraged. This bastard had finally found an excuse. This little bastard, he hasn't even taken my family's treasure yet, and he dares to be so impudent. I'm truly infuriated. The old servant beside him couldn't help but snicker. It had been a long time since he saw his master lose his composure so easily. If others knew that the dignified Duke Ju, who had always been polite and proper, was now like an old child, flying into a rage after hearing some mocking words, they would probably be dumbfounded. Chu Yang. The old servant completely remembered this name, this person. This fellow called Chu Yang could be considered to be extremely capable. A mere sentence from him was enough to make his master fly into a rage. There was no such person in the central continent. That bastard brat. Is there any more of those scoundrels or those nonsensical poems recently? The old man said angrily, did he come up with some bullshit music like the moon represents my heart again recently? Replying to young master, there isn't any, but there are some couplets. The old servant had followed the old man since he was young. Over the years, he had never changed the way he addressed the old man. He had always called him young master. Can you show it to me? Yes, young master. The old man took a look and saw the first couplet. He couldn't help but nod his head. There are 3 masters in 1 village and 2 li. They don't know the 4 books, 5 classics, and 6 meanings, but they dare to teach 7, 8, and 9 couplets. They are very bold. This couplet has some standard. It's much better than those messy couplet. He tried a pair, and it seemed to be very difficult. He couldn't help but nod his head. In the picture, the dragon doesn't roar and the tiger doesn't roar. The little wild dog is laughable. After reading this couplet, the old man couldn't help but sneer, what's so difficult about this couplet? But this little bastard calls himself Chu Hang. It seems like he's preparing to scam someone. His bullshit vision is very far-sighted. The old man immediately saw through Chu Yang's plan. To be honest, he felt that Chu Yang was very arrogant. The central continent was filled with scholars, and the central continent was the holy land for scholars. The other places were almost barbarians, and their education was extremely backward. Therefore, he was very surprised that Chu Yang could come up with such a couplet. According to Little Land's thoughts, that brat indeed has this goal. Moreover, he's planning to scam that brat from the Kong clan. The old servant Chu Yang was also a little surprised. The standard of this couplet was not low. Chapter 2107. As he spoke, he moved on to the next couplet, orioles and swallows, green and red, harmonious and harmonious. At that moment, he could not help but sigh. This couplet is not bad. I'm afraid there won't be many couplets in the Middle Plains in a short period of time. The old servant nodded at the side. He had to admit, I am superior and awe-inspiring, showing the courage of a tiger. When the old man saw this couplet, he felt that something was wrong. He muttered to himself, that bastard should be trying to match this couplet. I'll try to match it. You're planting a tree. Then, he realized that the anger in the couplet was getting stronger and stronger. It even seemed like the couplet was about to be insulted. The corners of his mouth twitched involuntarily. When he tried to match the couplet himself, he could not help but feel a toothache. The old man dared to guarantee that if that brat from the Kong family fell for it, he would be so angry that he would vomit blood. That was because when he tried to match the couplet, he realized that the answer was abnormally spicy. It made him feel extremely bitter instantly. This scoundrel, he has the time to come up with this whole set of designs. Can't he put some effort into studying? The old man shouted angrily, what kind of future can he have if he spends all his time playing with words all day? Young master, this is already a great improvement. If he didn't sing something like "The moon represents my heart," I would be a firework like myself. Such strange songs are already very good, the old servant said. The old man immediately thought of the poems and songs that Chu Yang used to corrupt morality. The corners of his mouth twitched involuntarily. He felt that his old servant had hit the nail on the head. This was indeed a great improvement. However, after that, he became furious again. That bastard has the brain to study, but he doesn't do proper work all day. He plays around and neglects his studies. This is really infuriating. So, that brat from the Kong family is not bad. The old servant could not help but laugh. Ha ha. When the old man heard that, he imagined the scene of that bastard Chu Yang fighting with that brat from the Kong family. He immediately burst into laughter. However, that kid from the Kong family isn't that skilled. He's a little narrow-minded. He's already sent 3 sages to the East continent. The old servant's words made the old man's expression turn cold. He said coldly, that is indeed despicable. He has the absolute advantage, but he doesn't dare to fight that bastard head-on. Instead, he resorts to such a clumsy method of killing. That is truly unbearable. Young master, do we need to stop him? After all, that little bastard is still too weak. The old man waved his sleeve and said decisively, there's no need. He'll have to face these things sooner or later. Moreover, isn't he very arrogant? It's fine if he says I'm incompetent, but he actually called me a piece of trash. I want to see how capable he is. The old servant couldn't help but nod. If Chu Yang wanted to marry Shangguan Lan, he had to prove himself. This process was inevitable. He could only say, if that's the case, he'll be in danger. I'm afraid his plans to revive the eastern wilderness will be ruined. Didn't he invite that arrogant sage Peng and the Xia family? The old man cursed again. That bastard really has some tricks up his sleeve. He knew how arrogant Sage Peng was. There was no need to say more about how arrogant Sage Peng was. However, he was very surprised that Chu Yang was able to invite such a crazy person. After a moment of silence, the old man spoke again. If that brat can lead the eastern wilderness to rise, I don't mind writing a few words on behalf of the eastern wilderness. The old servant was shocked when he heard the last sentence. However, he immediately understood. If Chu Yang could lead the eastern wasteland to rise, then he might be able to lead more people to rise in the future. This might be the reason why his master didn't get involved in this matter. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.